those who have logged into this mini-plenary virtual meeting. There will be now an opportunity for silence prayer or meditation. Thank you, honorable members. Before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitute a meeting of National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition, honorable members, to the rules of the virtual sitting, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, applies. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in the sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphone. Only if are recognized to do so, they can unmute their microphone. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up any noise that may disturb or interrupt the member on the podium. When recognized to speak, members, please unmute your mic and your microphone. And where connectivity permits, you may connect your video, but you must also upfront say it that you are unable to put on your video. Honorable members, honorable member may make use of the icon on the bar at the bottom of your gadget or your screen, which has an option that allows you as a member to put up your hand or his hand if you want to make any point of order. The Secretariat will assist the presiding officer or the chairperson to recognize members to speak. When using the visual system, members are urged to refrain from or desist from unnecessary points of orders or interjections. Honorable members, lastly, I wish to remind you that we are a meeting in a mini-plenary session, and therefore any decision will be taken in a full sitting of the National Assembly. The first item on the order paper, honorable members, is a motion in the name of Honorable, the leader of the opposition party. I now recognize the leader of the opposition party, Honorable John Steenhuisen. Over to you, sir.
Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair.
Tring.
It's Honorable Tring. My apologies, I had my hand up. Perhaps, yeah, my apologies for interrupting. But I think just maybe if you could get somebody to assist you with your video presentation. It may be fading you into the background and putting the picture in the foreground. So the picture that we're getting of yourself is not the best.
Okay, I'll sort it, that one. Meanwhile, let me recognize the honorable leader of the main opposition party. Thank you, honorable member, for that.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the colleagues that are present today for this debate. South Africa has been plunged into darkness and despair, and as Eskom collapses under the weight of organized corruption, our economy is being starved of the electricity it needs to operate. As the economy collapses, so do the lives and livelihoods of 60 million South Africans. So, fellow members of Parliament, we are gathered here today because I've tabled a motion to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate allegations of systematic sabotage and looting at Eskom. As the elected representatives of the people of South Africa, our role today is to debate the need for this thorough inquiry into organized corruption at Eskom, and then to vote on it at a later stage. The fact is, Eskom will never be fixed until we know who and what is breaking it. And the fact is that only a parliamentary inquiry can give a proper platform and protection to those innocent people who know what has happened at Eskom and who have been threatened and subdued into silence by the connected syndicates that extend right into the upper reaches of government. Those with information must not be assassinated like Babita Deokaran or poisoned like Andre de Ruyter. They need the full protection of a parliamentary inquiry if we are to ever establish the truth. And given the Andre de Ruyter poisoning, there's clearly a determined effort to stop the truth from coming out. And colleagues, make no mistake, these allegations are serious. They're made in intelligence reports containing detailed information gathered by private investigators. The reports tell us that 4 criminal cartels are operating inside Eskom, plundering its resources, bleeding it dry, and bringing our country to its knees. These 4 criminal groups steal billions of rands by controlling Eskom's procurement processes. All the people in the buying and selling process are either part of the criminal cartel or they are bribed or compromised. These cartels break Eskom infrastructure on purpose so that they can then profit from all the work and parts needed to fix them again. This is why Eskom pays 238,000 rand for a wooden handled mop, 80,000 rand each for knee guards worth 320 rand, 58 rand for a roll of toilet paper, and 56 rand for a bottle of milk. But that's small change compared to how much Eskom is overpaying for coal. Let's be clear, the only objective of these 4 criminal cartels is to transfer vast amounts of public money, money meant to sustain our energy supply, to a small number of people to make them extraordinarily rich. Now, we shouldn't even need to debate this. Obviously, South Africa needs this inquiry, and we need to do it urgently, because we cannot fix Eskom until we know who and what is breaking Eskom. And it should be an easy decision for us today, because we are the elected representatives of the people of South Africa. Each of us swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, which says clearly that Parliament's role is to watch over the government and make sure the country is being run for the benefit of the people of South Africa. Each of us swore an oath to act in South Africa's best interest, to put South Africa first. So yes, it should be an easy decision. But there's a complication, because the intelligence reports link 2 senior members of President Ramaphosa's cabinet to the 4 criminal cartels. The report suggests that it is the ANC that is bleeding Eskom dry. It is the ANC that is profiting off Eskom destruction, and it is the ANC that is collapsing the economy. Yes, sadly, South Africa's leaders are also Eskom's bleeders. Indeed, the cartels are called the Presidential Cartel, the Mesh Kings Cartel, the Legendaries Cartel, and the Chief Cartel. The reports reveal that these ANC leaders pay cash for luxury cars, and they wash their hands in 15-year-old whiskey while the lights remain off. The report also reveals that a senior ANC leader exercises firm control of these contracts awarded. He controls people high up in the Mpumalanga power stations to approve contracts for friends and family. He controls senior officials in Mpumalanga, such as police and traffic police chiefs and city councillors. Information suggests that contract beneficiaries pay him kickbacks for tenders awarded to his influence, and that this money is shoved into Jojo tanks on his private property. These are serious allegations, and they reach right up to the top and into the heart of government. Yet again, the ANC finds itself as accused number 1. So Parliament has an opportunity today to restore its image in the wake of the devastating findings of the Zondo Commission into its own failings during state capture. It has a chance to redeem itself from the shame of the Nkanda debacle, and it has a chance to return Parliament to its rightful place as the arena of executive accountability. So the real question today is, will the ANC MPs choose to protect South Africa, or will they choose again to protect the ANC? Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, now I recognize Honourable M.G. Maotwe. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chairperson, there is a tendency amongst opposition parties to prematurely call for ad hoc committees on all manner of issues. While the parliamentary rules allow for the formation of ad hoc committees and how these may operate, the rules do not state on what basis these committees may be called. In the case of Section 194, there was substantive prima facie evidence against the public protector to call for an ad hoc committee. There must be prima facie evidence for the calling of such an ad hoc committee, as currently there are only allegations that are currently untested and need to be tested. It will be a caricature of the findings of the Zondo Commission to suggest that an ad hoc committee is required to deal with the comments made by Director in his interview. What Chief Justice Zondo meant in the report is that there must be oversight rigor in the normal parliamentary processes. In our case, normal parliamentary processes for oversight and accountability has not broken down on this matter and any other matter concerning the energy crisis. There are portfolio committees such as Public Enterprises, Mineral Resources and Energy, as well as COPA dealing with Eskom, which are sufficiently empowered to do so. The reality is that the call from Honorable Steenhuisen for an ad hoc committee to inquire about the allegations made by Director is premature, as the respective portfolio committees are currently preparing to deal with the issue and establish the facts. Furthermore, it should be obvious that the portfolio committees are made up of all political parties, and these committees will first have to play their oversight role and establish accountability in terms of load shedding and issues related to the eradication of corruption in the entity which is part of the ANC government policy. Therefore, the investigation and formation of an ad hoc committee cannot be preceded before the established portfolio committees have done their work concerning this matter to establish the facts. This matter is not one-sided, as Honorable Steenhuisen seeks to project in a narrow focus in his call for an ad hoc committee. There are multiple critical components which the portfolio committees of Mineral Resources and Energy, Public Enterprise require to focus to end load shedding and to ensure the security of supply of electricity. Moreover, the committees dealing directly with the entity will have to deal with the issue of state capture and corruption in the entity. The parliamentary processes in terms of governance and oversight has not broken down, and portfolio committees must be allowed to do their work first to establish the facts and based on the balance of evidence to take the work forward. What you are doing, Honorable Steenhuisen, in terms of this motion is to put the cart before the horse in expectation of getting to a destination, and it cannot be done. It's not done. What is worse in this situation, calling for an ad hoc committee based on untested allegation of Mr. Director was to assume that these allegations are true and require an ad hoc committee. Your press statement calling for an ad hoc committee accusing the ANC as a whole for corruption was wrong, as rotten apples in a basket do not reflect the state of all apples. The DA has its fair share of rotten apples in its basket, and the party should know better by now that the ANC has never called for ad hoc committees for the many rotten apples in the DA basket. What is even worse in this case is that the DA has already taken a biased view on the matter of the allegation made by the Director in an interview and made up its mind on the role of the former CEO. The DA has already congratulated Mr. Director on his role as CEO at Eskom. However, the role of Mr. Director as former CEO is also a source of grave concern concerning the allegations. Director had a board which is the chief accounting authority, and he himself, as the chief accounting officer, was, from a fiduciary point of view, duty-bound to deal with the allegation he raised in an interview in terms of the law. For an example, if Director felt that there are leakages of nearly $1 billion a month, then why was there no forensic conducted and brought to the attention of the board and the shareholder? Those involved in the corrupt activities were not charged by former CEO, which is a problem, as this is a legal requirement in terms of the Prevention of Corruption Activities Act. It should be obvious to Honorable Steenhuisen that the 8.5 billion is a pledge from the international community for a transition from being carbon intensive to clean energy, and that the money has not been given to South Africa yet. No banker in the world will make such cash available without bankable business plans which outline the repayment of capital loans and interest. To add insult to the injury in this regard is the DA congratulating Director as a CEO in terms of the interview rather than on his actual performance at Eskom. Mr. Director arrived at Eskom when the energy availability factor was 69.6, and upon his departure, it is around 48%, which is the cause of load shedding. The former CEO was supposed to fix that. He was also tasked to deal with the issue of corruption and problems related to procurement. While there was some success in this regard, there was equally failure on the part of the former CEO, and therefore the allegations in the interview. The innocence of the ANC, or if there are some guilty elements, that does not lie in the support of an ad hoc committee called by the DA, but rather through the raters making evidence available and due legal process being followed. The rater interview was not based on evidence, and evidence is required for the law enforcement agencies to act for Parliament to oversight and thereby ensuring accountability in the form of consequence management. The ANC rejects corruption in all its forms, and law enforcement agencies need to act decisively to deal with all corruption at Eskom, and not just so-called cartels that Honorable Steenhuisen was talking about. The ANC has a program to deal with load shedding and ensure the security of supply of electricity. Here again, Honorable Steenhuisen chooses to ensure that he calls for ad hoc committee without wanting to allow the ANC government to implement its plan to end load shedding. For the people of this country, this is not a political football to try steal elections, but a real issue. Therefore, the ANC government does not seek a political ad hoc committee on the issue of load shedding, which requires making business decisions premised on technical solutions to resolve the problem. An ad hoc committee does not need to deal with the electricity crisis or corruption at Eskom, as the established structures such as the board and management are tasked to do so and report to the portfolio committee in Parliament. Therefore, there is no need for establishment of an ad hoc committee in terms of Rule 253, and worse, one that is not objective and biased from its conceptualization and inception, which will not add value to deal with the issues of corruption and load shedding. These require to be dealt with through the current parliamentary processes to establish the facts, and under balance of evidence, Parliament may or may not take further action. Honorable Steenhuisen is always ahead of himself, and in the process undermines the role of an established portfolio committees to effectively carry out their functions. Perhaps it is time that Honorable Steenhuisen receives some NSFAS bursary to undergo some tertiary education to elevate the level of understanding and contribution to Parliament so that he can make a meaningful contribution to South Africa's economic development. Thank you very much.
You must just finish, Umalu.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, order. I now recognize Honorable Kachalia.
Chair, one of the key aspects of our jobs as parliamentarians is oversight, especially in times of crisis. And so it is absolutely crucial that the full extent of the alleged widespread corruption and unabated operations of criminal networks and cartels at Eskom be fully investigated, particularly as any attempt to fix the utility is predicated on the eradication of such ongoing criminality with a clear agenda. Any absence of such focus will allow this criminality to continue unabated. And we all know that while this continues, the utility cannot be fixed. And in the absence of such fixes, load shedding is here to stay. And we all know what that means to our shrinking economy, to lives and livelihoods. This is why we are calling for an establishment of an ad hoc committee. And it is by no means premature, because there is a historical starting point which must be acknowledged and laid squarely at the feet of the ANC. Remember Hitachi Power Africa and ANC corruption at Eskom that paid millions of rands in success fees for lobbying to assist Hitachi to clinch rotten deals at Kusile and Madupe, giving the ANC investment arm Tatama Chancellor House a 5,000% return, and gave the nation in return a power deficit responsible for endless road shedding. The committee needs to investigate the cancellation of the appointment in 2019 of Bowman Gilfillan to investigate numerous contracts at Eskom, ranging from construction projects to consulting work valued at more than 178 billion rands. And in the light of Andre de Ruyter's departure, the security of tenure of the investigation he reinstated, during which the Special Investigation Unit fought a lone battle, graft at the company. More than 110 criminal matters have been reported to the police since 2018, with an additional 60 cases reported to the NPA by the SIU. Many linked to the construction of multi-billion rand power station in Mpumalanga that range from wastewater plants and accommodation to coal haulage, and even the purchasing of milk and toilet paper at hugely inflated prices, as the Honorable Steenhuisen has pointed out. It needs to report on Econ Oil Energy's deals to supply Eskom with fuel for more than 15 billion rand at inflated prices by paying inducements, including donations to the ruling party. It needs to consider intelligence reports obtained by the Daily Maverick that link 2 senior members of President Ramaphosa's cabinet to 4 cartels operating inside Eskom, links that expose these cartels to the sabotage of Eskom's power stations and to a program of political destabilization, links that the Raider was pursuing, which led to an attempt on his life. No wonder he resigned. It needs to re-examine intelligence gathered in the field before the ANC's elective conference in 2022 that suggested a direct link between the sabotage and the cartels and an orchestrated program of political destabilization involving senior SAPS officers, including a certain brigadier with the Eskom cartels. It needs to look into why the CEO said he did not believe the government has the political will to end corruption in Eskom, and why he was summarily dismissed for this, having tellingly remarked that evidence suggested that it is a feeding trough for the ANC. According to the narrator, 1 billion is being lost to corruption every month at the utility. He's documented this. No wonder Eskom is broken, and little wonder that Eskom is breaking the country. Investment is shrinking, joblessness is burgeoning, and every aspect of our country and its people are affected. On top of this, PwC's economist Louis Krugel reported that 208 days of load shedding in 2022 reduced real GDP by up to 5 percentage points. The effect is devastating. This, while the Rater's concerns expressed to a nameless senior government minister about the watering down of governance around the $8.5 billion earmarked to fund the transition away from fossil fuels, solicited the following response. You know, we have to be pragmatic. You have to enable some people to eat. The Rater also says he told an unnamed minister that a high-level ANC politician was complicit in the cartel activities. The minister then looked at a senior official and said, I guess that was inevitable and it would come out anyway, which suggests that this wasn't news. So, to put it another way, we need to know, by way of metaphor, why, given that the whole village knows about the flagrant infidelity of the wife of a certain villager, the ostensibly cuckolded party is unwilling to sanction the offenders. Perhaps he's too busy attending to his buffaloes and too busy minding the money under his mattress, so to speak. Come, let's get real, people, and let's institute this ad hoc committee, one that has teeth and eyes, unlike the hidebound and rubber stamping parliamentary portfolio committee that I sit on, lamenting. I thank you.
Thank you. That's Honorable Mentor. Honorable Mentor.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, on Monday, the 20th of March, 2023, the economic freedom fighters led by the President and Commander-in-Chief, President Julius Malema, and all concerned citizens of this country will embark on a national shutdown to demand electricity, and that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa must go. We are going to use our voices protected by the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa to raise our concerns, because here in this House, by mere use of majority, the only hope for our people gets diminished. We are taking to the streets on the 20th of March, nothing will move. And we have advised all businesses to be aware of the action day. No one will stop us, just like No one stopped any white organized protest, even those that undermined our country and even displayed their apartheid flag. Even the oil cartels, who's controlling the government party and think that their tankers will transport diesel and petrol, they are going to commit a terrible mistake. SAPS must be aware, if they offer escort to such truckers, they should start offering the support and escorting every truck that comes into the country, which becomes a subject of criminals and drivers being killed on a daily basis. We will defend the defenseless masses of our people with our bodies, and our bodies will be on the streets, all of us as fighters and the concerned citizens of this country. Every progressive force will put their body on the street. House Chair, the widespread corruption and unabated operations of the criminal networks and cartels, they are institutionalized in the evergreen contracts that we've been fighting for. Long-term contracts and coal contracts that the ANC have turned a blind eye to and ignored. We're not going to be guided by the arrogant and incompetent underwriters' allegations when we have always known all along about the corruption at Eskom. When we marched to Eskom on the 28th of February 2020, we told Mr. Deraite that corruption is rife at Eskom, and we warned him not to be part of the problem, but be part of a solution. But he did not listen to us. He became part of the problem when he started putting his friends in strategic positions and hiring them as consultants without even following the processes of government. He started taking illegal instructions for ministers and the minister of the SOEs to cancel contracts that were correctly awarded, only to award them to his hand-picked companies, and those companies that were advised by the Minister of SOEs, Minister Jamnandas. We know that the Deraite took an illegal instruction to cancel a contract awarded to Econ Oil, a company owned by a Black woman, because he was instructed by Mr. Pravin Gordhan and colluded with an Indian judge to rely on a non-existent affidavit to arrive at a favorable judgment, which today has never been reversed. The contract that was awarded to Econ Oil was then awarded to FFS, a white-owned company that has Investec as one of its owners. And we know that the Investec is a Mr. Pravin Gordhan's company. So we are not going to be part of picking a target from a group of wrongdoers. And the target is corrupt minority Black-owned companies, when the majority of white-owned companies that enjoy large share contracts continue with corruption and its business as usual. A white-owned company was overpaid 5 billion rand, but there was never outrage. Instead, Mr. Deraite is one who protected this company. Lastly, Chairperson, coal contracts make up the biggest spending item for Eskom, accounting for more than 50% of the budget. We know that Eskom is paying double the market price for coal, but nothing is being done, even when we advise Parliament on the processes to be followed in this manner. If there is any ad hoc committee that we must establish to get to the bottom of corruption at Eskom, the committee must inquire into all coal contracts at Eskom, new and old contracts, inquire into all evergreen contracts, inquire into all contracts between Eskom and smelting companies that get electricity practically for free, inquire into all studies that are imposed on Eskom to follow without asking questions. That is why today we have FDGs that we cannot fix. They can only be fixed outside. Any ad hoc committee that does not seek to investigate only focuses.
1 minute. Honorable Member, please hold on. There's a hand of point of order. Honorable Khatere, your hand is up, I'm advised.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm rising on Rule 85. The speaker on the podium referred that the Minister of Public Enterprise has issued illegal instructions to the former Group CEO of Eskom, and that his company illegally profited about 5 billion from the contracts of Eskom. You know very well, Chairperson, that such an allegation must be brought through a substantive motion. it must be brought to only through the substantive motion so that the minister can be able to defend himself when necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members.
Never protect corruption.
No, order, honorable members.
Corruption must never ever be protected.
No, order, honorable member, please. Honorable member, you know better that if you make an allegation, you need to make it a substantive motion. Please refrain from doing such comments. Thank you. May proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Point of order, Chairperson.
Chairperson, this is information we dealt with at Eskom. Am I not supposed to be answering and justifying what I'm saying?
No, 1 minute, honorable mentor. You know that I can't ignore point of orders. Honorable Godham, is Gordon?
Chairperson, I want to support Honorable Hadebe and state categorically that these lies cannot be perpetuated in a chamber like the National Assembly. They are lies.
No, Chairperson, you are not protecting our speaker, please. If the minister, if you want to speak, Gordon, he's now arguing the facts. He must argue the facts.
But I'm going to, honorable member, if you repeat it, I'm going to ask the IT to mute you.
No,
I've made a ruling that you must desist from doing such allegations, except if you are making a substantive motion. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, since the 5th Parliament, we have dealt with the issues of Eskom before various committees of Parliament, even the Scopa committee, wherein Andre de Ruyter was even told to stop hiring people on instruction of ministers. That's information before Parliament, before various committees of Parliament dealing with Eskom. Let me continue, Chairperson. Any ad hoc committee that does not seek to investigate these and only focuses on the 2-time street thugs based in Lutuli House will only scratch the surface of the corruption at Eskom. And Chairperson, let me alert the members of Parliament that even the ANC, when it says these are baseless lies, the very same ANC has written to various committees for the committees of Parliament to pursue the investigations of this. And the only way and the method of Parliament to pursue these particular investigations is when Parliament is establishing a committee assigned to investigate and pursue these matters. It cannot be that now the very same ANC is saying these are baseless lies. It's not true. We are in our committees dealing with letters of the ANC that are requesting committees to propose this kind of an action. Thank you very much, Chairperson. We will see you on the 28th on the streets demand.
Thank you.
Bring our
Thank you, honorable member.
National Chair.
We must never try to protect.
No, order, honorable members, order. I now recognize
March, we will deal with you.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Like most South Africans want to know who and what are the actors that have contributed to plundering Eskom. We want to have them not only exposed, but also held to account in the highest form. However, Chair, if the establishment of the committee would be another tick box exercise and does not deal decisively with the sabotage that has crippled Eskom, then it will serve as useless. We acknowledge the existence of the third-party participation in the operations of Eskom and the contribution that these criminal networks and cartels have had in the running down of Eskom, and also see the value in the establishment of this committee to unveil all that has happened within the entity under the nose of the ruling party. We also have to be realistic and more intentional when it comes to the purpose of the committee itself. It should not merely serve as a platform for recommendations without any obligation to fulfill those recommendations. If that's the case, will we then be complicit in the perpetration of crime taking place at Eskom and the ultimate doom of our country and our economy? We need to tackle the limitations in the functions and powers of this committee. If not, it will simply become another exercise in wasted expenditure. We are not blind, Honorable Chair, to the real cause of the problem that Eskom is facing, which is in fact the greed, corruption, and thievery in the ANC itself. The weak and compromised leadership in the ruling party have not only been involved in particular instances of corruption, but have, through their own actions, deliberately corrupted the entire system. The government has allowed Parliament to throw money at a non-financial problem for over a decade, to act as if government does not know about the persistent corruption in the entity highlights either an unacceptable ignorance or outright complicitness from the ruling party. A positive outcome can only be assured if the members of this committee are individuals of integrity who must appreciate the magnitude of the problem and place the interest of our country first. Only if committee processes and investigations are objective and transparent will we be able to root out the criminal culture which has manifested so deeply in government. The IFP welcomes the establishment of the ad hoc committee. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize Honorable Kunevart.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Chair, I want to say that I listened to the Honorable Member from the ANC who spoke before, and I challenge the ANC to tell us at which portfolio committees or joint standing committees there is an investigation to the corrupt activities in Eskom. I challenge them to say that. I serve on the portfolio committee of police. We didn't receive any such situation where we investigate. But that's not the point. The point is, Honorable Chair, that in terms of Section 92 of the Constitution, it states very clearly that the members of the cabinet, individually and collectively, are accountable to Parliament. And the question that must be asked is, in what manner is the cabinet accountable to this House? And we as members of this House must ask ourselves, in which way and what way do we see and have oversight to ensure that there is accountability? The atrocities taking place at Eskom is well known to the public. It is in the newspapers, and I'm not going to elaborate on that. Therefore, the people we represent are asking us the questions. And what do you do about all these allegations? And let us take the allegation from Mr. De Ruyter, referring that the minister was informed of 2 other ministers involved in corrupt activities. And the Honorable Minister, Mr. Gordon, admitted, yes, it has been reported to him. So it's not a matter of investigation of whether or not he admitted it. And then, Honorable Chair, any person that wants to ensure that there is accountability must then endorse such an ad hoc committee as suggested here by the Honorable Mr. Steenhuisen. Because we have a constitutional obligation to ensure that accountability. And I can't understand how is it that Parliament has never established a committee to say, Honorable Gordon, come forward and tell us who these 2 other ministers are. And further investigation, because they are accountable to Parliament. And don't hide behind the smoke screen, but it must now further investigated by the security structures. No, Honorable Chair, we have that responsibility. And I can assure you, the people of South Africa is accusing the members of Parliament, and specifically the majority party, the ANC, because if you do not agree, then Parliament does not accept. En daarom, as ons werklik ons plig van verantwoordbaarheid teenoor die kiesers wil nakom, moet hierdie komitee gevestig word. En ons moet daardie ministers laat verskyn voor daardie komitee en die korrekte feite plaas, sodat die mense van Suid-Afrika kan weet, wie is die mense en watter ministers of adjunkministers is betrokke by misdaad en korrupsie, sodat hulle tronk toe kan gaan en ophou om die belastingbetalers se geld te steel. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the ACDP, like so many others, was shocked by the startling revelations made by former Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter. And having been part of the Eskom Oversight inquiry and having read the findings of the Zondo report, we thought that state capture, corruption and criminality at Eskom, which has contributed to the high levels of load shedding, had largely been exposed, was being investigated, and a number of Eskom officials and private contractors had been charged. We were mistaken, however. Mounting evidence, including Mr. de Ruyter's explosive revelations, indicate that criminality at Eskom is not only continuing, but appears to have reached new and higher levels. Despite the ANC's protestations that it has learnt its lesson and now seeks to comply faithfully with the recommendations contained in the Zondo report, state capture is sadly still very much alive and well in the country. Eskom in particular is plagued by widespread corruption, with criminal syndicates operating seemingly at will to loot the coffers. This at a time when unprecedented levels of load shedding have had a devastating impact on households, businesses, and the economy at large. What is even more alarming is the allegations that government was not only aware of the ongoing corruption and criminality, but largely turned a blind eye to the extensive looting, estimated to be in the region of a staggering 1 billion rand per month. What makes it even worse is that it is alleged that high-level members of cabinet were intricately involved. Yes, Mr. de Ruyter was and is under an obligation to report this and other serious allegations to the law enforcement agencies in terms of PEPUDA. But he apparently did meet with high-ranking police officials regarding the criminal syndicates. According to media reports, Minister Gordhan, together with Mr. Sidi Mafamadi, who was President Ramaphosa's national security advisor, was briefed by Mr. de Ruyter and a senior investigating official. It is also reported that the National Police Commissioner had also been briefed by him on allegations of corruption, and he in turn appointed a senior police official. It is clear that existing portfolio committees have not been effective enough, despite their best intentions. Now, during the Eskom Parliamentary Oversight Inquiry, the Public Enterprises Portfolio Committee spent about 18 months sitting continually, and sometimes until very late at night, to inquire into state capture. And we scratched the surface. So it is very clear that an ad hoc committee is needed. The people of South Africa are outraged at the ongoing load shedding and allegations of looting. They demand action, including Parliament, to exercise its oversight function more stringently. The ACDP supports the ad hoc committee. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize Honourable Holomisa.
The House Chair, Honourable Members, the United Democratic Movement supports the motion. The Medupi and Kusile power plants were hailed as mega projects that would change the energy landscape for South Africa. We are still waiting for these white elephants to do their intended job. The entire tender was suspect because of the Hitachi Chancellor House deal. It is incumbent upon this House to investigate this and other alleged corruption at Eskom, post haste as the looting continues at Eskom. The Treasurer General of the ruling party must come and explain how exactly the ANC benefited from Hitachi Chancellor House and any other deal at Eskom. As public representatives, we are beholden to our constituents who lives and businesses, whose lives and businesses suffer due to load shedding. Furthermore, our economy cannot sustain the current energy calamity, and we have a responsibility to get to the bottom of this mess. Ngomvulo sabe sipaya ePretoria High Court sifuna kanye izizathu ezibangela uba kube kwi-load shedding kweli lizwe. ngoba sixelelwa nyani kwenye igame kuthiwa yamalahla amanzi, kwenye igame kuthiwa amalahla axhumene namatye, kwenye igame ngabantu abasabotage u-Eskom. Sifuna ke ngoku kudeske sizivele, because uba ngaba ngoku sizawuthiwa masibhatale imali nguNesta, kodwa imali ithathwe ngu-ANC through Hitachi no-Chancellor House, kutheni kusizwa kuthi? Makuditshwa namasela, makabuyise laa mali kuyokugqityezelwa ezaa plants. Masiyeke apha, sawudibana ngoMvulo ecourt nge-20th. Juju ziyondikroba nawe phaa ecourt, ndabe ndiphaya, uba ndinalo ithuba ndihamba ndawukroba kule matshi ezayo ePitoli. Enkosi.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize Honorable Mkhwanazi. Thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, House Chairperson, honorable members, South Africans. Chairperson, a parliamentary ad hoc committee will never produce a fair, wider, and more accurate picture of corruption at Eskom, better than the Commission of Inquiry into Estate Capture has already done. Calls to establish a parliamentary ad hoc committee to investigate systemic corruption at Eskom based on underwriter's interview contain significant flaws. In particular, it is rare for an ex-employee to speak well of or report hassle-free interaction with their former employer. Unsurprisingly, Honorable Chairperson, the right interview should be seen in a similar light. So the writer's allegation should be treated as a sour grapes rather than something worth investigating further through a parliamentary ad hoc committee to uncover the truth. Although the right distorted allegation have generated a criticism of the ANC-led government by opposition parties and the South African citizenry, it is not possible to retype the reality. The reality could be retyped as follows, Honorable Chairperson. Eskom has put the financial means and human resources and its disposal to detect corruption and fraud, as well as any form of procurement process abuse, in line with the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry into Estate Capture. As a result, Eskom established the State Capture Task Team, which works collaboratively with National Prosecuting Authority and the Special Investigation Unit to proactively implement the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry into Estate Capture. Recently, Honorable Chairperson, Eskom State Capture Task Team has made tremendous efforts to recover unlawful payments of over 3.1 billion from Mixley and countless other service providers. Through collaborating partnership with the NPA and SIU. As part of expediting the civil recoveries, Eskom is currently pursuing approximately 3.8 billion through civil action against its former executives and directors that were the brain and heart of a state capture. And this is done in collaboration with the law enforcement. Honorable Chairperson, these recovered billions and other underway indicated that Eskom State Capture Task Team is not limited to impressive appearances, but rather yield the kind of actions and effectiveness needed to address endemic corruption at Eskom, which is the pivotal domestic SOE in the sector that serves as a backbone of the South African economy. Of course, Honorable Chairperson, there has been limits in the work of Eskom State Capture Task Team, and gaps exist between what the task team's implementation plan promised in the paper and what is delivering in practice. For instance, criminal procedures fails to maintain the desired pace or speed, but this does not imply that the task team remains deficient and that a parliamentary ad hoc committee can succeed the desired results that the task team interventions. Instead, Eskom State Capture Task Team has proven very active at implementing the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry into the state capture and ensuring that the desired goals are met. Take an example, Honorable Chairperson. The task team has successfully reduced the costly corruption activities that were commonly placed at Eskom by taking disciplinary action against delinquent employees and directors, as well as deregistering and blacklisting delinquent suppliers from Eskom database. These disciplinary actions have had unlimited success, as they resulted in some delinquent directors being suspended from the professional bodies, such as South African Institute for Chartered Accountant. Honorable Chairperson, my apologies. Honorable Chairperson, a new contractor being placed under the provision block until supplier disciplinary processes are concluded. Moreover, Chairperson, these disciplinary actions have resulted in the opening of 144 criminal cases within SAPS against Eskom employees for fraud and corruption, with only 41 cases resulting in the criminal procedures under the Criminal Procedure Act. In addition to that, Chairperson, 42 of 183 employees that terminated their contract was dismissed for fraud and corruption as part of the effort to unearth corruption and fraud. Honorable House Chairperson, unlike a parliamentary ad hoc committee that is prolonged in nature, Eskom State Capture Task Team fast-track governance reforms that are problem-driven and are tied to results that are not too distant. In short, Chairperson, the task team is tightly time-bound, ensure the rapid implementation of government reforms and rapid feedback about the reform process. More importantly, there are sufficient follow-ups that by the Standing Committee on Public Accounts to make sure that the task team governance reforms work more actively and intent than ever. These follow-ups by SCOPA has yielded gains and achievements. For example, SCOPA has resolved to invite the RAI to appear and fully elaborate on the corruption allegation he has leveled against cabinet ministers. Honorable Chair, this shows that the call for the parliamentary ad hoc committee to investigate the systemic corruption at Eskom is nothing but a proposal of a more of the same, as the ad hoc committee will in fact duplicate the functions of SCOPA and some extent of the portfolio committee on public enterprise. Apart from the task team, Eskom has rationally and streamlined reduced campaigns to bolster ethics, integrity, and compliance programs aimed at rooting out corruption, fraud, sabotage. Some of the key milestones include, Chairperson, 1, a crime risk management designed to combat, amongst other things, bribery and corruption, financial crime, physical asset crime, cyber crime, and anti-money laundering as Eskom. Secondly, a single investigative unit established to manage all investigative matters relating to fraud and corruption. And thirdly, an automated procurement system to better manage procurement spend and protect against integrity breaches include tools such as price tag, digitalization of stock control, the use of the augmented procurement model in certain business areas, and the use of e-action. And lastly, Chair, the Know Your Supply campaign, with which entails the proper screening all business partners, and be it through detailed due diligent exercises, audit, or proactive screening of directors. Honorable Chairperson, this campaign has led to the foundation of intervention geared towards combating crime, corruption, sabotage, especially in the supply of coal of Eskom. In particular, trucks involved in possession of sub-grade coals destined to Matla, Camdale, and Kendall power station have been impounded whilst the drivers were arrested between October and November 2022. In December 2022, the Hawks raided numerous allegations, I'm sorry about that, Honorable Chairperson, illegal coal yards in Emalahleni that were involved in swapping quality coal with sub-grade coal destiny for Eskom power stations. Eskom lost billions of rands due to this type of irregular coal supply. This is primarily the reason why reforms in Eskom procurement process are tied to legal and regulator mechanism to expose corruption, bribery, sabotage, patronage, and the abuse of power by government officials responsible for providing monitoring and oversight to Eskom. To complement reforms in Eskom procurement process, the Department of Public Enterprise has rolled up a management framework across all SOEs under its portfolio. The objective of this framework is to eradicate conflict of interest within SOEs through procurement process that prohibits the awarding of contract to SOEs, boards, members, and employees, as well as their close relatives that hold a financial interest.
Honorable Konasi, 1 minute, ma'am. I recognize Honorable Kakube, you've got your hand up. There's a point of order, Honorable Konasi. Honorable Kakube, your hand is up.
Thanks, House Chair. I wanted to find out if Honorable Mkhwanazi can take a question about which portfolio committees are investigating Eskom corruption.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Mkhwanazi, are you willing to take a question?
If I finish in time, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. You're not willing to take a question. You may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Financial interest in one of the relative SOEs. Interestingly, none of the board members across all SOEs was found doing business with respective SOEs. This gain already achieved through this framework refer positively on the ANC-led government genuinely efforts to fight against corruption. Therefore, Honorable House Chair, a parliamentary ad hoc committee would not add any value because Eskom State Capture Task Team and its collaborative partnership with Hawks, the NPA, SIU, and the Department of Public Enterprise is addressing the matter. Honorable Chair, is addressing corruption, fraud, and bribery, sabotage, deficiency within the utility in a very sustainable and controlled manner that is yielding the desired outcome. Honorable Chairperson, we will, as an ANC government, we are an ANC government at work, the only home and hope for the millions of South Africans. Will continue not to lose focus, but to genuinely deliver on the expectations of the South Africans, and will fight fraud and corruption in the systematical and the sustainable manner. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, thank you, Honorable Members, for noting that you would have seen the speakers list. There was an omission of the ATM with an understanding that they were going to debate on electricity, but moving forward, we have agreed with the front table that will include all political parties so that members can change their minds and they could be accommodated in the speakers list and time allocated thereof. I now recognize Honorable Zingula. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, House Chair. Chairperson, Parliament has a duty to play an effective oversight role over the executive. When Parliament fails in its mandate, the widespread corruption in government continues. In light of the problems facing our country, Parliament must fulfill its constitutional mandate and play an effective oversight role. As ATM, we wrote to the Speaker for the existing committees of Scopa, Mineral Resources and Energy, and Public Enterprises to play an effective oversight role on the matter. In the absence of the existing committees doing their work, an ad hoc committee has to fill that gap. It cannot be that an accounting officer of a state-owned utility that is destroying the lives of the people by load shedding makes such allegations and Parliament does nothing. Under the rater must also state to Parliament, why did you not utilize the existing oversight mechanisms in Parliament? Why choose a media outlet to make those statements? Because we as a Committee of Mineral Resources, we did summon him. He has never spoken about such corruption in those committees. Therefore, It cannot be that he makes those statements in media houses and not make them under oath in Parliament. The non-action of Parliament after such allegations makes it complicit in the corruption of Eskom. We know that a weakened Parliament benefits the governing party as its actions won't be checked and it does not account for public resources. In order to fix Eskom, all contracts, particularly evergreen contracts, must be scrutinized, and contracts that are illegally awarded and do not make financial sense to Eskom must be cancelled. There is no way Eskom will be turned around without scrutinizing all contracts. All evergreen contracts, all coal contracts, all contracts with foreign-owned companies must be scrutinized. And Parliament must not be selective in dealing with wrongdoing. Parliament must entrench a culture of accountability, and it must be real accountability. We need a strong and effective institution in order to turn things around in our country. And Parliament must restore the trust of the citizens by doing what the Constitution requires of it. As the ATM, we do support the creation of the ad hoc committee. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize Honorable AIC.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Ad hoc committees are envisaged in terms of Rule 253 of the National Assembly rules. The proposed drafts to establish an ad hoc committee in order to probe systemic acts of corruption and criminal cartels at Eskom is premature. There is no denying that Eskom is laden with massive acts of sabotage and looting. Accounts of corruption at the utility company were laid bare by none other than Eskom's CEO and director. The hoax is on course to reign in these acts of economic sabotage. It is our considered view that an ad hoc committee is undesirable at this stage. It has the knock-on effect on diverting our attention, resources, and oversight function away from Eskom. We know that portfolio committees are empowered in terms of Rule 227 to make recommendations into organ of state's functioning and structure. Therefore, the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprise, including the Standing Committee on Public Enterprises, is better suited to conduct a similar inquiry over Eskom. Honorable members, we also wish to caution the Standing Committee on Public Accounts to desist from politicizing the work of SCOPA. While Eskom must be held accountable, it serves no functional purpose to plug SCOPA into the terrain of cheap politicking. That is not what SCOPA is about, both in terms of practice and the rules of the National Assembly. Honorable members, as we rise to deepen public accountability, we must hold Eskom accountable in an efficient and effective way without stretching our resources and resolve. We therefore do not support this draft in its current form. It is premature. I thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Honorable Cope. Honorable PAC. Honorable Al-Jama. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the opportunity. Chairperson, the issue of Eskom is not something that happened in the last year, the last 5 years, but it's been ongoing. Concerns were raised many, many years ago in 1995, in the year 2000, in the year 2007. Some political parties in this house at that time were part of the ANC that should also take equally responsibility for it, rather than now coming and finding faults, but did very little or nothing at that stage to be able to address the concerns that were raised at that stage. The second point I want to make is on the issue of derater. Don't you think he should also be charged? He was paid with taxpayers' money. He had a job. He knew about the corruption and looting and everything that was going on there. He didn't deal with it while he was there. He waited for an opportune moment when he's leaving, then he raises it. But under his watch, the question is how much of money was embezzled? How big did the corruption become? And why did he not take appropriate action? Now telling me I had coffee with some police officer and not officially lodging a complaint as the CEO, the one that is the custodians and
Honorable Sheikh Imam, I advise that you switch off your video now
but
because we
failed
are
to
frozen.
carry out his functions and duties. That's the first argument I want to make. The second, because he could have even gone to the he talks about the issue of Minister Godan or whoever it is that said it's inevitable. Inevitable means that whoever is looting and is corrupt, it's inevitable that it'll come out eventually. They always say a criminal leaves a loophole, leaves a gap. It's the same thing that's happening with others that have been charged criminally, serious allegations. Nobody does anything about it. Now, the NFP is not satisfied that an ad hoc committee now, at this time, will solve the problem. First, everything that he knows, and then let's look at it. What is important now is we know all the weaknesses and problems that are taking place in Eskom, some of which we knew many years ago, the skills, the lack of maintenance, the evergreen contracts. I've sung a song on it, but like a stuck record. And I hear it being mentioned again, but in the political parties that were there all these years, so I think, you know, it is not in the interest. I noticed that everything, another inquiry, over oversight, that is what is happening. Clearly, we need to address that to be able to.
Honorable Sheikh Imam, I guess we have lost.
At this stage, we perhaps will look at it at a stage which is more convincing when more evidence unfolds. Other than that, we believe it is an act of criminality. Let the law enforcement agency.
Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam. On my screen, you're frozen.
Let us not come here.
I suggest you switch off your video and try and conclude. Okay. Honorable members, we shall proceed to Honorable Supraman. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And 1 second, Honorable Member. Honorable Sheikh Imam, I have been advising you to switch off your video. You got frozen.
Yeah, I think, I don't know whether I got sabotaged or what, but anyway.
No, Honorable Members, order.
No, it's sabotaged by the DA.
Kako, ITC, please mute any member that is not recognized, please. I did say it earlier on. Over to you, Honorable Soprapen. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, House Chair Sarupin. Today's debate, Madam House Chair, was incredibly disappointing, but it was not surprising. Over the last decade, we have seen, when it comes to corruption and accountability, a standard playbook of scapegoating, obfuscation, blame shifting, and denial. It's the norm for the governing party and their allies. It was the norm under President Jacob Zuma. And today that playbook was dusted off and brought out again. The revelations around Eskom, both in the Zondo Commission and again recently by former CEO Andre de Ruyter, point to a dire need for Parliament to step up and fulfill its role to conduct oversight over the executive, especially in an environment where we go for 12 hours a day without electricity. And Parliament has a duty, when allegations of cartels linked to senior politicians are made, to probe this matter very deeply, to summon documentation, to examine evidence, to hold members of the executive to account, and to make findings accordingly. But this does not suit the ANC. The ANC has systematically neutered this parliament and created an imperial executive. And it is only with an unaccountable imperial executive that these cartels and coal minings linked to politicians can arise without a single prosecution or any accountability to show for it. Now, the ANC spent most of this debate being hypocrite, saying that Mr. De Ruyter should have reported the matter to police. This is ironic, considering that the president took 2 years to report the theft of money from his couch to the police. In any event, Mr. De Ruyter stated clearly that under obligation by law, he reported his findings to his superiors in the various ministries. It appears that ministers have selective amnesia and to what was reported to them from Eskom over the past 3 years, and that the intelligence gathering was not taken any further precisely because the gathering of this evidence would implicate members of the executive. The truth is that Hitachi Power Africa was fined in a foreign jurisdiction for its collusion with Chancellor House, and the seeds of mass-scale corruption at Eskom, underpinned by a dubious relationship with the majority party, was sown in 2008 when load shedding began, and Cater saw an opportunity to loot at a scale never seen before. The consequence of this is that Eskom's massive debt burden, which was used to fund cronyism and corruption, is now being foisted onto the taxpayers, crowding out spending for nurses, for teachers, for doctors, for police officers, and other critical services. By rejecting an ad hoc committee today, the ANC has shown that they're not learning lessons from the Jacob Zuma era, that they're not interested in heeding the lessons of the Zondo reports. They've demonstrated today that they're not interested in holding their own people to account. And what we have seen is in these desperate attacks and sad insults against the leader of the opposition is that they have actually ignored discussing the fact that Eskom has plunged South Africa into an economic crisis on a day-to-day basis. If the arms deal was the ANC's original sin, Eskom is the ANC's total descent into wickedness. We heard ad nauseum about frameworks and plans, which we know will never be implemented. And so this is why public polling shows that the ANC is on its electoral knees. And the death of the ANC cannot come soon enough. And when the era of one-party dominance comes to an end, I have no doubt that this parliament will find its backbone and will be happy to institute all the necessary ad hoc committees and investigations required to find out who has destroyed energy generation in South Africa. And at that point, I can assure you, there will be a reckoning on behalf of the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize Honorable Magaka. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. The ANC rejects the request by the DA to urgently establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the allegation of systemic corruption at Eskom because this request is drawn from an incomplete and misleading conclusion made by under De Ruyter's. De Ruyter's conclusions that the ANC-led government forestalled Eskom's ability to address corruption, fraud, and sabotage is not correct. Eskom has dramatically improved its ability to escape the box it has been put in during the heyday of state capture. In December 2022, the South African National Defence Force military personnel were deployed to deter the growing threats of sabotage, theft, vandalism, and corruption at 4 of Eskom's power stations in Mpumalanga province. As a result, cracks have begun to emerge at the behest of coal cartels that supply poor quality coal intended to sabotage the utility infrastructure and operation. These operations were a way of providing the cartels with an easy source of money. Collaborative partnership between Eskom, the South African National Defence Force, and the Hawks shows that Eskom is proactively committed to initiating the process of implementing conceptual relevant solution to corruption, fraud, and sabotage at hand without a parliamentary ad hoc committee. While the examples of corruption, fraud, and sabotage at Eskom go beyond coal to include diesel, valves, and cables, the most important thing is that acts of crime are no longer everyday occurrences for most of Eskom's power station. In short, Eskom is not irreparably broken as DA will wish. Instead, it suffers from a few ailments such as corruption, fraud, and sabotage, which are the enduring legacy of the state capture. These ailments are therefore indicative of a much deeper condition that was built into Eskom at the very start of the state capture. Nevertheless, Eskom has purposefully and explicitly designed and implemented reforms to insulate itself from these ailments in a way that strengthens its role as the country's national utility responsible for supplying electricity to meet the demands of citizens and businesses. For example, Eskom has established the State Capture Task Team, which is working closely with Special Investigation Unit, the South African Police Services, the State Security Agency, and the National Prosecuting Authority to implement Zondo Commission's recommendation. In line with Zondo Commission recommendation, South African Police Services and State Security agents are assisting Eskom to screen all contracts and companies before they gain admission to Eskom's database. These are some of the internal policies that are being proactively strengthened and implemented to mitigate corruption, fraud, and sabotage. We note the gains of the internal policies that were far resulting in the arrest of 43 perpetrators. We are aware that some of these policies will take time before they yield desired outcomes, partly due to the lack of coordination between the existing partners in the State Capture Task Team. Unfortunately, this information is supposed to be at the hands of members of parliament, but it's frustrating to hear people who are supposed to belong to this committee where these things are always presented. They cannot say a thing about it. Without energy security, the realization of these overarching policies will remain elusive, if not a pipe dream. We appreciate that appointment of the Minister of Electricity is in line with the implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan and the National Development Plan. The Minister will play a pivotal role to fast-track and address all the operational challenges. Chairperson, there is tangible, reliable evidence which reflects that Eskom fares well in terms of addressing corruption, fraud, and sabotage. Moreover, the Minister of Public Enterprise, Mineral Resources and Energy, and Minister of Electricity, as well as the portfolio committees on public enterprise, mineral resources and energy, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts are well capacitated to provide checks and balances on the work of Eskom's State Capture Task Team. While we are cognizant that these checks and balances take time to perfect, this does not suggest that the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee is a paragon of accountability as portrayed by the DA and other opposition parties. In fact, oversight and accountability include reporting consequence management for corruption is the work of the Portfolio Committee. The work for eliminating corruption lies with the board, management, and law enforcement agencies. In short, a Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee is neither the birthplace of solution, nor can it foster deliberative decision-making. But this does not imply that Parliamentary ad committees are necessarily doomed. Instead, our own argument as the ANC is that Eskom can take the kind of action and effectiveness required to deter corruption, fraud, and sabotage without Parliamentary ad committee guiding it in any fundamental way. Therefore, we are saying no to ad hoc committee and yes to Parliamentary Portfolio Committee being allowed to do their work and establish the fact based on evidence. Honorable Steyners and his proclivity syndrome that drives him to use unsubstantiated allegation as the basis for establishing an ad hoc committee is wrong, subjective, biased, myopic, and demonstrate political emptiness, and therefore it should be rejected. DA should be reminded that when Musi Maimane and Herman Mashaba left them, they accused the party of racism, which is very serious allegation. The ANC didn't call an ad hoc committee to investigate such a serious allegation of racism in DA, as there was no prima facie evidence to substantiate that claim. However, we need not ignore the racial undertones in right-wing parties, such as led by the DA, obsession with the director's childish allegations. Yes, this is childish allegation, Chairperson, because he behaved like a spoiled rich child who throws his toys all over the room precisely because his 18 million per annum job reached dead end. The Ratels himself confessed in his own mouth that he has dismally failed to get the nation out of load shedding, despite being paid massive packs. In 2020, in February, he committed himself to end load shedding in 3 years. Our portfolio committee and public enterprise rally support behind him, despite our reservation for that lengthy period. The minister, the president, the treasury, the people of South Africa all surrounded him and treated him like a prince. Just a month before the end of the 3 years he promised and committed, he came back requesting another 2 more years. In fact, if the truth can be told, Cartels used Eskom to drive his independent power producers agenda in order to capture Eskom to private accumulation at the expense of the poor of this country, who by and large black people. Now, because he's a white man, bourgeoisie racist media, including these pathetic racist political parties, have to believe this, including this former Homeland general who is excited about court. How can a rational person believe a group chief executive with all the necessary powers on his last day in his office that he left in disgrace make such stupid allegation, and you just don't have any form of criticism but believe him? Oh my God, please give me a break. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, I shall now order,
Chairperson, point of
Honourable
order.
Members.
Chairperson.
There's a point of order. Yes, you come through. Yes, I'm recognizing you. Point of order, Member.
Chairperson,
Honourable Maklu.
Yes, Chairperson, I want you to investigate whether it's parliamentary to use the word "oh my God" in your speech.
I shall do so. No, order, Honourable Members. Order. No, Honourable Member. I'm going to
It's
reject
wasting
you.
Parliament's time, this one.
No, Honourable Makaka, please. Honourable Members, I shall hand over to Honourable Kasa to preside over the next debate. I now recognize Honourable Leader of the main opposition party, Honourable Steenhuisen. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. 2 years ago, in May 2021, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Thandi Modise, apologized to the nation for Parliament's role in state capture. In doing so, she admitted that Parliament was complicit in state capture because it failed its constitutional duty to hold the executive to account. At that time, the ANC stood as accused number 1, as it does now. At the time, the ANC MPs were called on to protect South Africa, but like they're doing today, they've chosen to protect the ANC. Indeed, Judge Zondo made it clear that Parliament had all the powers to stop state capture, but it did not stop it because the ANC and Parliament did not want to stop it. Now, the opening speaker of the ANC spoke about the importance of higher education. He mentioned things like NSFAS, but yet he and his speakers chose to bring their 30% arguments, although for the last speaker, I think 30% would be generous, to the debate.
You know nothing about NSFAS when you don't have higher education.
The reality is that the Zondo Commission and its findings are nowhere in any parliamentary committee, just as the allegations are nowhere in any parliamentary committee, because the ANC doesn't want to deal with them. And it's not surprising, because let's put the facts on the table. We all know who this person being referred to is Mr. Didi Mabuza. And we all know how connected he is with the ANC. And we all know how terrified the ANC is releasing this information. That is the reality here today. The ANC is going to wait till he's safely ensconced in Russia, like they waited for the Guptas to be in Dubai and Mr. Grizi to be in Italy before this parliament slowly gets off and does anything. And that is why load shedding is going to be with us for time to come. This corruption is never going to come to an end because the ANC doesn't want it to come to an end. The only way it's going to come to an end is when this country cuts the power of the ANC in the next election in 2024. They've shown today their lack of argument, their poor grasp of the allegations and what needs to be done, and the fact that they should actually, in Makwenazi's case, rather go and resign and be part of Eskom, because she clearly doesn't want to do her job as a member of parliament, which is holding the executive accountable. This is going to be another failure of parliament. Wait and see. And when we have another commission inquiry, this
point
debate
of
will be
order.
reviewed. Thank you.
But that must be taken to court when by mentioning people casting aspersions here. DG must sue you.
I wanted to recognize that point of order because of the transition. I was late. Now I can hear. I'm not sure if you want to pursue that. Honorable, oh, there were many hands. Yeah. Honorable Kwahobe, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Chair. Perhaps you may have missed it because of the transition that you speak of, but members of the ANC are routinely shouting onto the platform and not called out for it. I just want to remind members, Chair, that this is a parliamentary sitting. This is not, out in the streets. So can people behave accordingly?
We are here because we know that. Don't tell us that you want to tell us about the streets.
Do you see?
Honorable members, can
No.
be
No.
orderly? I'm going to recognize all of you. Can you be orderly? I was listening to Honorable Kwahobe. I'm not sure if you are done, Honorable Kwahobe. Can I come to Honorable Hadebe?
No, thank you, Chairperson. I think that the leader of the opposition is out of order. He cannot come and attack a person who cannot defend himself. You know very well that the former deputy president of the country is no longer a member of parliament, but he cannot be attacked because he cannot defend himself. I think that's sheer cowardice. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think that one is known by the leader of the opposition. And I think we'll look at it and see what can be done about it. Honorable Majosi. But by the way, we want to proceed with what we are supposed to. We should be getting into another debate. Honorable Majosi.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much, Chairperson. No, I'm rising on the matter of, I think firstly, when we start with the debates, the Chairperson at that time would explain how we must conduct ourselves, what should happen if a member has a point of order. It can't be, Chairperson, that there are people who are just casting aspersions and saying whatever that they want to say to a member that is on the floor that is debating. We are all here. We all have a right to hear and listen to what other members are saying. So can we please, Chairperson, I request at your discretion that we eliminate such things, because it is truly, truly not fair that we are listening and members are just coming in as they like.
Thank you very much. I wanted just to entertain the engagement and take notes, but I think we'll come back to say what needs to be done. This was partly due to the transition. The other chairperson was leaving, a new chairperson was coming in. We're not sure who should be taking the points of order and whatever. I think let's close this matter. If there's anything that needs us to come back on the matter, we'll do that. We shall now proceed to the last item on the order paper, which is a subject for discussion in the name of Honorable Maotwe on electricity crisis in South Africa. What is to be done? Can I recognize Maotwe? Honorable Maotwe.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, the Economic Freedom Fighters President and Commander-in-Chief, President Julius Malema, held a media briefing yesterday and made it clear that we are not going to be intimidated. On the 20th of March, 2023, we are taking to the streets to demand an end to electricity blackouts. We are going to demand an end to this self-inflicted electricity crisis. On the 20th of March, 2023, we are taking to the streets to demand a working Eskom that prioritize generation of electricity and scheduled maintenance to reduce breakdowns. We are taking to the streets to demand an end to racist and discriminatory electricity blackouts that target rural areas and townships. House Chair, we welcome the support of all progressive formations, political parties, labor movements, and many other organizations, including NGOs, who are tired of electricity blackouts. The ground forces of the EFF have been everywhere on the ground, mobilizing our people, conscientizing them, and making them aware of the importance of the national shutdown. Indeed, our people are tired of electricity blackouts and will take to the streets in their hundreds to demand and demonstrate their frustration and anger at an unreliable electricity supply. We don't have a history of violence, but please, we warn everybody, do not push us. House Chair, 4 things have caused the electricity crisis that faces South Africa today. Number 1, when the ANC government was warned that at some point, electricity demand would surpass supply unless the country built new electricity generation capacity, they did not listen. It was only after the load shedding that happened in 2008 that the ANC took the warning seriously. Not only did we start building Kusile and Medupi late, but we also did not complete them on time and within the budget. Instead, it was an opportunity for the ANC to loot through its investment company, Chancellor House and Hitachi. Number 2, House Chair, Eskom's failure to manage coal contracts that made up a large part of its budget is problem number 2, even when it was clear that they were paying double the market rate. Number 3, the failure to have a comprehensive, aggressive, and well-managed maintenance plan, and this was made worse by the appointment of an incompetent person who failed to manage a mere food packaging company. Number 4, there's a deliberate program in place to collapse Eskom and make it dysfunctional in order to sell it for a fraction of its value. To Mr. Ramaphosa and his handlers, the privatization of Eskom is a means to an end. What they want is to sell us electricity for profit at a premium and control every sphere of our lives. While there may be many other reasons, House Chair, these are the main ones that have led us to this crisis. What have been the results? More than 1,900 hours of load shedding in 2022. This is 79.
Chair has been raising their hand for some time.
This means that for 22% of the year 2022, South Africa did not have electricity. This year, House Chair, it is projected to be worse, and you can see it is already going there.
There is a point of order, Honorable Maotwe. Honorable Hadebe.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I'm rising on Rule 84. The member has used an unparliamentary language that the president has handlers. I think cannot be accepted. Thank you, Chair.
I will follow up on that. I'll check and give feedback.
But the truth is he has handlers.
No. Honorable Maotwe.
Handlers are handlers. What do you want us to say? There's no any other word for handlers. There's no parliamentary word.
Yes, handlers. Ramaphosa is being handled.
The truth of the matter is he has handlers. That's all.
Order, honorable members. Obviously, I'll go through because there are many people now who are speaking. I've said I'm going to come back to this point of order that was raised in terms of unparliamentary language. I don't know now who are these others who are taking over. Honorable Maotwe, can you proceed?
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, this year, it is projected to be worse, and we can see it is already going there. The South African Reserve Bank has projected that the country will have 200 days of electricity blackouts. That's 4,800 hours of electricity blackouts and more than half the year in complete blackout. The government party has demonstrated that they do not have the political will or a believable plan to stabilize electricity supply beyond the privatization led by the National Treasury. The only way we are going to grow South Africa's economy is if we stabilize all energy sources. What is to be done? House Chair, we must explore other forms of energy generation, including the use of uranium for industrial development, public purposes, and use by all. The state should invest in green energy, which must include the manufacturing and installation of green energy alternatives, not the corrupt IPPs. We must divorce ourselves from the delusion that we're going to discontinue the use of coal. It is not going to happen. Like the Deputy President of the EFF said, we must explore carbon capture and storage. We need to connect into the national grid the floating regasification units, the FRUS. We should plug in the 1,220 megawatts of electricity from the approved car power ship from Turkey. We must approve the proposal by Rosatom to build a nuclear power station in a way that will not undermine our fiscal sovereignty. And this means we must explore models such as build, operate, and transfer. House Chair, we must ensure that the 125 million US dollars approved by the African Development Bank for modernization of Kahora Bassa hydroelectric scheme in Mozambique is completed on time. This is what needs to be done to stabilize the energy sources in South Africa. We know that Eskom is privatized, and when we take over power as the EFF, we will undermine the capital-driven, greedy project that is using the national treasury to impose nonsensical conditions on the so-called Eskom debt relief. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is Honorable Luzipo.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, the honorable members of the House. One takes this as a very important debate in society in general. But let me borrow from Thomas Sowell when he says, I quote, "The problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feelings, open and close quote." We take this debate, therefore, very seriously because it requires capacity to think, but also to provide solutions. Honorable Chair, the country is indeed on the grip of an electricity crisis, which requires a coherent and implementation plan that will ensure the best practical solution. The current levels of load shedding are very harmful to the economy, which therefore makes a slow recovery since the pandemic of COVID-19, as well as the unemployment rates that we continue to experience as a country. Moreover, the stage 6 load shedding continue to undermine the well-being and development as it impacts on schools, health, water supplies, and other social and socio-economic challenges that we continue to be faced with. And therefore, the ANC government has taken effective steps in the formation of the NETCOM plan to deal with the electricity crisis. So the question is, what has to be done to solve the electricity crisis, which is what has become an issue, in particular from the side of the opposition. The debate on electricity crisis has been held in the House on many occasions and was recently part of the SONA debates. The point, Chair, that Honorable Chair one wants to raise is that we have had multiple debates on the electricity crisis. And the question is, do we engage on debates of this nature simply because there are slots available, or do we enter in debates of this nature with a concrete intention to ensure that we provide solutions? And I think that is the challenge that we are faced with. It is also important to note that the ANC government has commenced with dealing with the problems associated with Medupi and Kusile to ensure that these plants can optimally function. Integral to this was dealing with the companies which were involved in state capture and corruption. But also it is important to note that more than 3 billion rand has been recovered from those companies that were involved in such acts of criminality. Furthermore, steps have been taken to improve the coal quality to Eskom plant, as there has been interceptions on coal deliveries by particular cartels and syndicates, which include the mixing of coal with stones. And we think that those are some of the landmarks that we should appreciate. So the work that has been done, it is a work that it should be appreciated. It is also important to note, like other honorable members have raised, that part of the problem at Eskom has been the issue of the electricity availability factor. And the fact of the matter is that at the time of the CEO of Eskom, when he came into being with a promise that load shedding will be a matter of the past within 6 months. We have not seen that. In fact, the electricity availability factor at that time was at 69.6%. And at the time of his departure, it had dropped up to almost above 49%. That demonstrates that when we have had a crisis, that on the other side had someone who had no clue of what it was supposed to be a projected improvement of the power utility. It is important also to note that the question, therefore, at the center of it is that in any debate or issues that relate to a debate on electricity, Eskom remains the base in which we move from in terms of the improvement of electricity challenges. I think it will be important, Honorable Chair, to therefore highlight and look at the issues that we think that may have to be attended to. Amongst those, obviously, is to continue to fight criminal elements that we continue to hear about. It is important to encourage not just post-experience, but during the time of experience, encourage those who are given responsibility to be in charge of institutions like Eskom to report all cases of corruption, not as a post-factor exercise, so that decisions that are taken, especially at the level of a platform like Parliament, are more informed, not that to be second-guessed, because in future, this means that Parliament, through even its committees, will take decision on the basis of a less factual information that is presented. That is, I think, for me as members of Parliament, we should emphasize that in any institution of government, institution of the state, let there be truthful presentations to portfolio committees of Parliament and to Parliament itself, so that Parliament does not take decision on a matter that is not accurate. And at the end of the day, it gets blamed for acting on what one would call misinformation. What are the issues that needs to be addressed at Eskom, but also in terms of electricity? One of the key issues is that we have to ensure that the electricity availability factor improves from where it is now to at least 90%, and that is possible in any way. One of the issues that we have to deal with is to address the issue of unplanned capability loss factors, which means those are forced outages. Secondly, is to also to address issues of management stability. Amongst those issues is that we must have management that is prepared to address internal challenges and improve its capacity to take decisions. It's also important that there must be a comprehensive maintenance plan that is in place so that we can be able to address some of the shortages. Most importantly is that there must be some immediate interventions that are being made that include addressing issues that relate to maintenance. One member made an example here, which I think is a critical issue when it comes to planning, that at some point we went to stage 6, and the reason we went to stage 6 was because coal was wet. That is poor management, because no one doesn't know that a wet coal, it may not be, is not correct in terms of the electrification exercises. We need to improve in intra-governmental trade. In this case, is that many of the entities of government continue to trade separately, even when it is possible to have complementary work. It is therefore important that with the interventions that are being made, those state institutions, especially state-owned companies, that can provide their capabilities to address the issue of electricity crises by providing specific and specialized services, that also be taken into consideration. The just energy transition must occur based on ensuring that base load supply is restored, and this part also must ensure that the restructuring of Eskom into generation, transmission, and distribution, as the transmission company will be a standalone company, which will enable further generation capacity to reach the market. In essence, meeting the supply-demand balance is critical to ending load shedding. But at the same time, as the ANC government will seek to ensure that the development of further generation capacity to ensure localization and distribution through the implementation of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. Government solutions in electricity supply in this country have been outlined and are contained in the NETCOM plan. In the SONA debate, the Honorable President announced the appointment of a Minister of Electricity to ensure that government plans for the reduction of load shedding and its elimination are implemented. This was in consideration of the impacts to the economy and society at large of the load shedding, particularly your stage 6 load shedding. And therefore, Eskom's time frame for maintenance of plants and improving the energy availability factor needs to be shortened.
Time is up, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Yes, before I allow the next speaker, I would like to caution honorable members. There was a stage where everybody was speaking from all angles. I could not warn anybody because I could not identify. Let all members be warned. If we disrupt the session, I will not allow it as the chairperson, and will obviously kick out everybody who is disruptive. People must speak when they are recognized. Can I now proceed and recognize Honorable Mileham?
Thank you, Chairperson. It's often said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's exactly what the ANC government has done with the electricity crisis in South Africa. They have wasted time and money on war rooms, commissions, committees, and plans that only serve to preserve the status quo. They have rewarded the very same people who have caused the problem with more power and influence. They have repeated the same empty promises that load shedding will end soon without any evidence or action. At what point does this madness end? At what point is the ANC government going to acknowledge that it has failed South Africa, our people, and our economy? The topic of today's discussion is the electricity crisis in South Africa. What is to be done? It's solutions focused. So let's look at how we address the issue. The first solution must be to get rid of the incompetent and corrupt ANC government that has mismanaged this electricity crisis from the very start. We need a capable, transparent, and accountable government that can think outside the box and act fast to fix our energy shortfall. Fortunately, we have an excellent example of such a government right here in the Western Cape, where the Democratic Alliance is building resilience and independence from Eskom at a local and provincial level. Where the DA governs, like in Cape Town, George, Stellenbosch, Kocha, and Midvaal, the municipalities are aggressively pursuing their own sources of electricity, whether from own generation, independent power producers, or more recently by allowing small-scale embedded generators, essentially residential and commercial rooftop solar, to feed surplus electricity into the municipal distribution network and be paid for this at an attractive rate. Steps are being taken to make it easier for consumers to install their own generation and to make it cheaper to do so. In Cape Town, for example, the municipality has done away with the requirement that grid-tied systems must be a net consumer of electricity. The Western Cape Provincial Government has just announced 1.1 billion rand in emergency funding to respond to the short-term impact of load shedding on government services, to secure diesel to keep essential public services running, to help buffer schools from load shedding, and to provide poorer households with emergency power packs that will reduce the impact of load shedding on daily tasks. Chairperson, we need to open the doors to decentralized power generation. This would necessitate investment in grid infrastructure and the rapid unbundling of the Eskom monopoly, a process which appears to have stalled completely, despite more promises from the president and his cronies. We need to build transmission lines to our renewable energy resource-rich areas, the Northern, Western, and Eastern Cape, and rapidly convert our decommissioned coal plants in Mpumalanga and KZN, where we already have grid infrastructure, to renewable resources and other sources of generation. We need to fast-track independent power production. We can do this through red tape reduction, incentivizing investment, and allowing municipalities and businesses the space they need to procure electricity directly, without the big brother command and control mentality of Eskom and NERSA. We need to be able to build generation where it is needed, not where it is convenient. A key component of any future electricity infrastructure in South Africa is storage. We need to invest in large-scale electricity storage solutions to enable the integration of intermittent renewable energy sources like solar and wind into the grid.
You are frozen. I don't know what is the problem. Honorable Miller, you are frozen.
Management. The National Solar Water Heater Program has been stalled for years and is costing the countries hundreds of millions in storage fees. The rollout of energy efficient lighting has come to a grinding halt. Little is being done to encourage consumers to conserve electricity. The time has come for some bold messaging in this regard and an aggressive campaign for energy efficiency. We need to manage the electricity we do have better. By encouraging citizens and businesses to adopt energy efficient practices, we can reduce the demand for electricity and lessen the burden on the power grid. I have previously pointed out how the 2019 Integrated Resource Plan was out of date the minute it was gazetted. Despite promises from President Ramaphosa and Minister Mantashe, we are still using this inaccurate and problematic document as the basis of our electricity planning. South Africa needs a new IRP now, not in 3 years' time, and it needs to be realistic. We cannot afford to buy into the misguided pronouncements of the Eskom board that they will achieve an energy availability factor of 60% by the end of March 2023, when they can barely hit 50% in mid-March and show little likelihood of improvement in the near future. We must prioritize the maintenance and upgrading of existing electricity infrastructure. This will ensure that our electricity supply is reliable and efficient and can meet the needs of our growing population. As part of this, it is vital that we secure our cables, our substations, and our transformers. The SAPS cannot be permitted to stand idly by and watch as cable theft occurs in front of their very police stations. At the same time, we need to protect our electrical workers and contractors. In a horrific incident last week, 4 bona fide electrical contractors were killed by vigilantes who thought they were cable thieves. This cannot continue. Where the DA governs, we have taken a comprehensive and forward-thinking approach to solving the electricity crisis. We have shown that we have practical solutions that reduce the impact of load shedding.
Like in Swan.
That by promoting independent power producers and renewable energy, improving energy efficiency, and using technology to manage our energy system, we can build a more sustainable and reliable electricity system that benefits all South Africans. But we cannot do this alone. We need the support and cooperation of our fellow South Africans, and we need a national government that is committed to building a more sustainable and reliable electricity system for all. We can continue down the path of insanity, or we can choose a new path, a path that leads to real solutions and a brighter future for all South Africans. In 2024, let's turn the lights back on. Let's vote for a DA national government. Thank you.
Never. Honorable members, before I proceed, there were many issues that I said I'll come back to yourselves about. The first one was when Honorable Stian Hazen was said to have talked about former Deputy President Mabuza, and that's allowed that it's a political statement. Mr. Mabuza can use the law to request the right to reply. So that's the first ruling. The second one was where one member said the president is having handlers. It should be ruled out, that one. It's out of order. If the member wants to bring that, it should have been done in a substantive motion in terms of Rule 85. That member must withdraw that statement. It's Honorable Maotwe. I would expect you to withdraw that. Honorable Maotwe. actually that talks to the integrity of the president and him not sticking to his oath of office. Honorable Maotwe, are you prepared to withdraw? If not, then I'll obviously instruct some action. Honorable Maotwe.
House Chair, what do you want me to withdraw?
That the president is having handlers.
Yes, Mr. Ramaphosa is having handlers. Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa has got handlers, and I will never withdraw. And we're taking it to the streets on the 20th of March on Monday.
What's a handler when now
Mr. Ramaphosa from office. Mr. Ramaphosa must resign on the 20th of March. Nothing will stop us. Nothing will deter us. We will not withdraw anything. Ramaphosa has got handlers. We will not withdraw anything.
You are in order, TG. You are in order, TG.
Shut down this country on the 20th of March. The money of this country is tested in his mattress and sofas, and we will never recognize
but also we can't be muted like this and then
ceased to be the president when he started
Maotwe has handlers because mute everyone, mute everyone.
Chair, we are being abused.
That there's no declaration of anything.
Chair, we are being abused.
Mute this person who
allowing
makes so much
abuse.
fuss thrown off the platform. Chairperson, mute this person and not us.
Table staff, please mute anybody who speaks without my permission. Otherwise, you are making it difficult for me to control the meeting. Honorable Papo, you wanted to say something? But I've ruled on the two matters. And Honorable Maotwe is out. And,
No, Chair.
Yes. Honorable.
You have made a ruling which was defied. I think you must consult on what should follow on the fact that a presiding officer makes a ruling and is defied. There are procedures which must be taken. You see now, like now, I'm on the platform.
You are the advisor now.
The person who defied you is still on the platform. Nobody has removed that member. I'm on the platform. She's interfering, which reinforces my point that there must be punitive measures against Member Maotwe, who thinks that we are political toddlers.
We're shutting down
out
this
of order,
country on
Chair.
Monday.
Please, can you remove this who's now hijacking this sitting for their nonsensical so-called shutdown?
Nonsensical. Who are you saying the shutdown is nonsensical?
Nonsense. Don't call us nonsensical.
Can you please call this member of the
nonsense?
58 votes.
Honorable Maotwe should have been removed from the platform a long time.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You must remove that nonsense power. You must also remove him. He's not your advisor here. Who is he to speak without being recognized?
I did.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Point of order. Honorable Majodina.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I want to appeal to all members. Can we be honorable in our approach? Once the presiding officer has made a ruling, can the ruling be respected, please? We are all honorable members. Can we please adhere the House? Thank you, Chair.
Can I also appeal to the table staff? If I order that somebody be removed, let that happen, because otherwise I will not be able to control all this. I think I've taken note of what Honorable Papo was saying. We'll follow up on that. But I indicated that anybody who just stand up and speak without my permission will be automatically be removed from the platform. So please, table staff, assist me to do that. Thank you. I have given rulings in both of those issues. Can we proceed and call Honorable Madokwe?
Chair, sorry, before you call Madokwe, a point of order.
Yes. Who is calling?
Yes, Chair. Yeah. It's Honorable Mente.
Mente, yes.
Yeah, my hand has been up. You are not calling me. Oh,
No.
Chairperson.
Yeah. Please continue. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Chair, I think you are being unfair and inconsistent in your ruling. Honorable Papo and Litsi have been insulting TG, Honorable Maotwe, on this platform, calling her stupid, calling her nonsense, and all sorts of things. And nothing is ruled on that. It's not parliamentary, it's not allowed. You can't call a member of parliament a stupid and nonsense, you're speaking nonsense and all of those things, and nothing happens to them. They remain in this platform, and then Maotwe must be removed. For what good reason, Chair? That's inconsistent.
No, it's not inconsistent in the context that you are raising these matters now. So I'll look at them. The two terms that you have used, I'll look at them and I'll come back and rule on the matter. Can we continue, Honorable Maotwe?
Chairperson.
Who is that now? Honorable. Yes.
Yes, Chair. After checking what Honorable Mendes alleged about our names, after checking that, can we also be, can she be called to apologize at least to some of us who have not uttered any of the words that were alleged to have said? Thank you very much.
We'll also note that Honorable Hadebe.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I also call that the table staff will check someone from the AFF who said Honorable Papo is nonsensical, is a nonsense. He must be removed. I think that's unparliamentary according to Rule 84. Thank you.
Okay. I see Honorable Hadebe. Oh, you have spoken already. Can we allow Honorable Maotwe to proceed? Honorable Maotwe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, the country is on its knees and our people are getting impatient at us just convening meetings, debating, and there's no tangible change on the ground. The EFF has consistently provided clear guidance on how to avert the energy crisis we are currently facing. But for years, our suggestions have been ignored. Chairperson, we will have one crisis after another as long as Cyril Ramaphosa serves as this country's president. This is a man who, when told to walk black for once, bolts to white Standard Poor's and colonial Britain and USA, implementing their environmental imperialist and privatization agenda, jeopardizing our sovereignty and very lives. It is not only Eskom that has collapsed under his leadership. All our SOEs are. We can tiptoe around this issue for as long as we want, House Chairperson. But at this juncture,
can I recognize Honorable Hadebe? There's a hand, Honorable Maotwe.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm rising on Rule 82. The member on the platform has just called the president on first name terms, which is not allowed in the House. Thank you, Chair.
Can you please withdraw that?
It's Mr. Ramaphosa.
Can you please, Honorable Maotwe?
President of the country of South Africa. Thank you. I continue, House Chairperson.
Yes, continue.
Thank you. We can tiptoe around this country for as long as we want, House Chairperson, but at this juncture, nothing short of joining the national shutdown on the 20th of March and insisting that its demands be met would have any impact. We refuse to play to this gallery where we just speak, and if we are lucky not to be kicked out or muted, sit and wait for talk shops where there is never any implementation. Since 1998, there have been repeated warnings to the government about a looming electrical crisis, and we have now experienced load shedding for almost 15 years. To the people of South Africa, this is unfair. The EFF has long offered practical remedies to the energy crisis as the ruling party has failed to resolve it. After March 20th, when we have more rational individuals who are in charge of this nation's affairs, we will collectively fix our nations and find a solution to the energy crisis. Anyone who's unwilling to put in the necessary work will fall on that palapal. First and foremost, government needs to review the entire Eskom board and remove anyone who has other obligations except fixing Eskom, or whose affiliation with Eskom is not to save Eskom, but serves to further ensnare the claws of the greedy, profit-driven and racist private sector into our already troubled Eskom. This Reuters dismissal was insufficient, Chairperson. If anything, he too needs to go on trial for his involvement in the sabotage of Eskom. He has had many years to reveal what he's revealing now before more than 4 portfolio committees of this parliament during his tenure. Committees he has undermined throughout. His current tender trends are solely intended to spare himself the humiliation of being tossed aside by their godfather Jamnandas before their agreed departure date of end of March. Chairperson, if we're serious about solving this energy crisis, the Eskom board chairperson, Mpho Makwana, who recently urged South Africans to find alternatives outside of Eskom, must go immediately. This is a deliberate admission that the chairperson and his collective have no intention to salvage the crisis we're facing, but to continue the distraction cited by the region.
I recognize Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Chair. The member again has violated Rule 82. She have referred to the Minister of Public Enterprise in first name terms. Thank you.
But his name is Jamnandas.
I think you know better how to refer to an honorable member. Can you do that, Honorable?
It's fine. Minister Jamnandas, there's no problem.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can I continue?
Yes.
To bring the most scientific aspects of salvaging Eskom, we must resist the neo-colonial agenda that seeks to coerce South Africa and other developing nations into using renewable sources instead of coal. If one were to look at Eskom's coal-fired power stations, they would see the extent of our country's dependence on coal. We have billions of tons of coal reserves which can last us hundreds of years. This was admitted by Minister Samson Mandashe, who stands on mainly coal power generation, has become very wishy-washy since that old lady from the US came to our shores and met with them. The EFS for years has called for an energy mix, which will in the main use clean coal and existing carbon capture technologies, renewable energy, nuclear energy, and any form of energy that will not be harmful to our people, our economy, and our environment. The president of this country got excited and went around signing loans, tying us to decommissioning plans we have all rejected. As a result, no one wants to explore the existing technology developed by our own entities that speak to clean coal. He must take out the cash he has stashed in his furniture and return to the US their checks. We are not charity cases, nor lab rats. To restore Eskom to its former status, a team of highly skilled engineers, which include those who formally raised our energy availability factor to around 78%, should be assembled. House chairpersons, IPPs have been in use since 2018 and have not resolved load shedding. Government must stop misleading us. If anything, they must tell our people that IPPs cost almost 4 times other energy sources. The state is entangled in disastrous contracts with IPPs who are charging astronomical figures to their services, and that IPPs...
Honorable Madoko, there's a point of order. Honorable Abrams.
Is the honorable member prepared to take a question?
Are you prepared, honorable member?
I am not here for questions, Chairperson.
Yes, the member is not prepared. Proceed, honorable member.
Thank you, Chair. The state is entangled in disastrous contracts with IPPs who are charging astronomical figures for their services. And that IPPs that in the main will benefit their funders and people's brothers-in-laws are currently refusing to provide electricity because we're unable to pay the prices they demand, which will substantially raise the cost of electricity for our people. This country has the capacity to and should establish its own green energy industry, as opposed to surrendering one of the most basic responsibilities of the state to the funders, close allies, and family members of the ANC and DA leaders. In conclusion, Chairperson, the South African government must accept the assistance provided by its BRIC partners to address the energy crisis through more affordable fuel and ways to produce energy. The only reason South Africa has not accepted assistance is because your president's obsession with appeasing his masters at the British Empire, which he visited soon after the funeral of Queen Zamazama, and the US, which even had the audacity of an ambassador sitting in on strategic meetings of their party, signifying blatant capture. He must go now. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We will now move to Honorable Butelis. Honorable, recognized.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The subject we're discussing today is most welcome because it gives us an opportunity to direct ourselves towards a permanent solution for energy crisis in South Africa. However, it's very unfortunate, Chair, that it has taken us this long to get to this point, considering that we have known this problem for years. Eskom is a very important infrastructure in order for us to achieve our developmental goals. This is clearly defined in its mandate as it's supposed to provide electricity, create opportunities, develop skills, and generate profit. Instead, it has done quite the opposite in all material respect. The biggest question is, how did we get here? The cause for total collapse of Eskom is thievery, greed, and corruption in the ruling party, compromised leadership, and killer deployment. As the former CEO of Eskom currently put it, that Eskom has been a feeding trough for the ANC. Even amidst, Chair, of the incompetence of the government, let us not be deterred from the reality that we do need energy, we do need electricity, and we also need sufficient power generating utility. Eskom has shown that it cannot handle the pressure that comes with electricity generation and supply. To ask the question that surrounds this debate as to what needs to be done, the entity and the department that oversees it has to ensure proper planning and the refurbishment and maintenance of the infrastructure in all power plants in accordance with increased demand and population. We need to ensure proper accountability. We also need to ensure that all leakages within the system are closed, particularly those relating to financial losses, mismanagement, and corruption. Most importantly, Chair, we need to remove the ANC from the helm of this country. We need to rid ourselves of the rot within the ANC. We need to rid ourselves of the compromised leadership of the ANC and elect leaders with integrity and a political will to put our country back on track on the trajectory of recovery and growth. We need to terminate with a sense of agency the contract with the ruling party, the ANC, which has revealed its true nature. The ANC has shown that it does not care about citizens of this country. It only cares about looting and putting this country in a total calamity. The intention of the ANC to destroy this country has just been exposed through the debate we had previously on the formation of the ad hoc committee to dig deeper into Eskom's crisis. What did they do? They are opposed to it. And why? It's because it's going to reveal their clandestine activities and the rot within the ruling party. As long as the ANC is leading this country, nothing will ever change for better, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you very much.
The embarrassment for the data.
Can we now move to Honorable Dr. Boshoff?
Voorsitter, baie dankie. Die vraag is, wat aan die elektrisiteitskrisis in Suid-Afrika gedoen moet word? As mens vra wat die staat moet doen, is die antwoord net dit wat niemand anders kan doen. Hier is natuurlik verskillende benaderings ter sprake. Die ANC glo in die ontwikkelingsstaat, waarin die staat 'n toonaangewende rol speel, maar in vennootskap met die privaat sektor. Die EFF staan by leninistiese kommunisme, waar volgens die staat alles namens die mense besit. Die VF+ is een van die partye wat reken die mark moet 'n groter rol speel. En die ANC en EFF noem ons soms om daardie rede markfundamentaliste.
Chairperson, why is this man debating about us?
Die werklikheid is dat enige stelsel kan werk as sekere voorwaardes geld. Van bo tot onder moet bekwame mense aangestel word. Niemand hulle salaris vanuit die onderneming aanvul. Elke werknemer moet tot die primêre projek van die onderneming meewerk. Die langtermyn moet altyd voor oë gehou. Gewoonlik werk private eienaarskap beter om onbekwaamheid, laksheid en oneerlikheid uit te staan. Die staat is gewoonlik beter daarmee om by die volgende finansiële jaar einde te kyk na die volgende geslag of selfs die volgende eeu. Dit is gewoonlik. Suid-Afrika is anders. Maar eers, die energiekrisis is ingewikkeld, want die teenkant daarvan is 'n klimaatskrisis. Boonop word wêreldwyd verwag dat vloeibare brandstowwe in die vervoersektor grootliks met elektrisiteit vervang sal word. In 'n funksionele, eerlike en goedgesinde staat, een met 'n caring government, sou 'n krisis van hierdie aard nooit ontstaan het. Langtermynplanne sou uitgevoer en gereeld hersien gewees. Daar sou iets soos 'n social compact gewees het met 'n verwerking. Gelukkig is daar projekte, selfs binne die staat, wat voortleef. Klein modulêre kernkrageenhede is wel in Suid-Afrika ontwikkel, maar na die projek beëindig is dit oor see voortgesit en kan binne enkele jare in Suid-Afrika toepassing vind. Waterstof as metode om hernubare energie te berg word gelukkig in die Departement van Wetenskap en Innovasie gehuisves, nie in minerale hulpbronne en energie. Hierdie twee bronne kan in die toekoms die basislading oorneem wat tans van steenkool afhanklik is. In die tussentyd moet Eskom opwek wat hulle kan en doodseker maak die netwerk se frekwensie word gehandhaaf. Solank dit gebeur, bly die netwerk staande en kan bykomende produsente daarmee sinkroniseer. Dan moet die staat die mark open sodat enige energieprodusent die netwerk vir eie gebruik en verkope kan aanbied. Dit kan mikroprodusent verbruikers wees, met ander woorde wat produseer en verbruik, groter besighede van dieselfde aard of megaprojekte spesiaal vir kragvoorsiening. In 1923 toe Eskom gestig is, was die privaat sektor op korttermyn wins ingestel terwyl die staat verder kon kyk. In 2023 het Eskom talle personeellede in diens wat hulle sakke so vinnig moontlik wil vul terwyl die private sektor 'n langtermynsiening. Wat gedoen moet word is die volgende. Eskom moet opwek wat hy kan, solank hy kan, en die netwerk staande. Die private sektor sal die res doen. Want die private sektor is nie maar net white monopoly capital. Daar is ook miljoene gewone mense wat hier is om te bly, wat groter en kleiner besighede besit, daar werk op 'n besluitnemende posisies is, en in gemeenskappe, wat kinders verwek, grootmaak, en na kleinkinders uitsien, of reeds het, wat hulle deels nou en later. Hanjane, ooit aholo, sê die uitdrukking. Dit is hoe die ANC Eskom gebreek het, en dit is hoe die gevolglike krisis te bowe gekom gaan. Die staat kan 'n rol speel, maar eers as die ANC verwyder is. Ek dank u.
Thank you. Well, members are allowed to heckle each other, but Honorable Shonyang is consistent in disturbing the debate. So I'm noting that. That's a warning, actually. Can I call on Honorable Trink?
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The ACDP, like most South Africans, have been exposed to the endless reports of bribes and kickbacks relating to the ANC and Eskom. We've seen the state capture report and the current revelations by the former CEO of Eskom. I've said this before and it bears repeating. The nation's electricity crisis has clearly been caused by ANC mismanagement of Eskom, including its corruption and the party's refusal to carry out sufficient maintenance over the years. One of the major consequences of the load-shedding power cuts has been severe damage to our international image and consequent loss of investment for economic growth. In 2001, Eskom was rated the best utility company in the world. 2 decades later, Eskom has been called the most hated company in South Africa for our interminable power cuts. Eskom has gone from a profit of 1 billion to a loss of 14 billion, and its staff costs increased from 11 billion to 33 billion. And yes, Mr. Ramaphosa, it is government's obligation to provide electricity. Electricity is a derived right, one on which all other stated rights function. And municipalities do not operate outside of the government's framework, and government is obligated to ensure that municipalities deliver services. Eskom has become a basket case and is bankrupt. The ACDP has been at the forefront calling for a political, managerial, and administrative cleanup at Eskom. Our leader, Dr. Kenneth Meshwe, has asserted that Eskom does not need another politician with the title Minister of Electricity. It needs a professional, skilled engineer, regardless of skin color, who knows how to fix Eskom. Clearly, the solution to Eskom, the Eskom crisis, involves a multi-dimensional approach, which includes renewables, nuclear, hydroelectricals, and coal. Clean coal technologies, which are being implemented throughout the world, is a must, for without it, some 55,000 jobs in the coal industry will be at risk. Fraud and corruption must be aggressively dealt with, and planned competent maintenance adhered to. We must recognize the private sector as collaborators and not enemies, and progress could be made in the energy sector if we move forward with the private sector in tandem rather than faltering with distrust. With sound leadership and governance, the situation can be turned around. It will, however, take integrity and political will. The ACDP has that will. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Zungula. Honorable Zungula. I've just seen your face, Honorable Zungula.
Yeah, sorry, Koloman Chair. Chairperson, this debate requires that we put politicking aside and confront the root causes of the electricity crisis. The crisis of load shedding is ruining the lives and livelihoods of millions of South Africans. Citizens are tired of load shedding, and their hope is that Parliament will play an effective oversight role in order to end load shedding. We're in this crisis, Chairperson, because there's a deliberate plan to privatize Eskom. What should happen is the following. All evergreen contracts in Eskom must be cancelled. Coal contracts must be in line with the recommended NESA prices. Corruption must be fully investigated, and the hawks must waste no time in charging perpetrators. Eskom must embark on a drive to service power stations. Maintenance of power stations is critical for the efficiency of power stations. Eskom must upgrade generation and transmission infrastructure. Managers with a proven track record of turning around power stations must be deployed to poor-performing power stations. Board members and executives that are owning and linked to IPPs must be removed from Eskom leadership. Given the crisis we're in, Eskom, in consultation with the relevant departments, must do everything possible to extend the decommissioning schedule of the power stations that are due for decommissioning until we're out of this crisis. Advanced coal and diesel management systems must be deployed to power stations. There must be a live tracking and accounting of coal and diesel from source to site. Eskom must attract skilled and experienced personnel from the market to train and mentor existing employees. These experienced staff members must be site-based, and their contracts must be linked to tangible key performance targets. Eskom must improve the low staff morale, and top-performing teams and individuals must be rewarded. Eskom needs capable, skilled personnel such as engineers, artisans, with a clear mandate of turning around the power utility, instead of board members, executives, and managers who are in Eskom to create a market for IPPs. To the people of South Africa, as the ATM was saying, our mind should never be conditioned to accept this normality as part of our lives. Much that we have favorite load shedding schedules. We should not be having load shedding in the first place. We have enough coal, enough power stations, many skilled individuals that can run Eskom to provide electricity for the entire country. This government does not have the political will to resolve load shedding. We, the people, must reclaim our power and put in place a government that is caring, a government that feels the cries of the people, a government that serves us, a government that is committed to resolving the problems of the people, and that is an ATM-led government. Next year, people must vote ATM. Thank you.
Honorable member. Honorable Malinga.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to yourself. Permission not to open my video, Chair, to maximize connectivity. Chairperson, the ANC-led government plays... Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Chairperson, the ANC-led government plays an active role in allocating resources to address load shedding and electricity crisis, while the NECOM is responsible for shaping the implementation of the energy action plan. However, there are serious limits to how far the ANC-led government the ANC's-led government's active role and the effectiveness of the NECOM in implementing the energy action plan can go. For instance, Chairperson, the declining refinery capacity in South Africa poses critical security of the supply of diesel risk. Secondly, lack of investment in local refinery capacity coupled with the disruptions in the supply of diesel because of the Russian-Ukraine conflict, turned the running of Eskom and IPP's diesel dependent open cycle gas turbines into a costly exercise that is unsustainable. While OCGTs are instrumental in ensuring that the country does not experience higher stages of load shedding when the system is strained, it is clearly unjust to suggest that the ANC-led government and the NICOM have the superpowers to make Eskom less vulnerable to the changing demand and supply dynamics in the oil market. Nevertheless, the ANC-led government will be supporting Eskom to secure additional funding to cover the OCGT's costs for the rest of the financial year. More importantly, there is tangible evidence indicating that trends in load shedding are changing for the better due to the use of the OCGTs to close the widening gap between the demand and the supply of electricity. Consider, for example, Eskom has been rotating load shedding stages rather than keeping load shedding at one higher stage for a prolonged period to protect the competitiveness of our key economic industries with the highest employment multipliers, such as agriculture, mining, transport, and manufacturing. Moreover, the rationale for rotating load shedding stages is built upon the strong foundation of pulling more people and small businesses into the mainstream economy through a reliable supply of electricity as a catalyst to a rapid response to the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Of course, Eskom's rotation of load shedding stages has had flat or minimal positive spillover effects in the strategic sectors of the economy, implying that the Energy Action Plan requires an impetus to achieve its stated objectives of ending load shedding and electricity crisis with promising results. The ANC-led government has introduced two instruments to directly reverse the qualitative and quantitative impacts of load shedding and electricity crisis on the strategic sectors of the economy, small businesses and households. In particular, the Minister of Electricity and the declaration of a state of national disaster vary in their potential to responsiveness and ability to address load shedding and electricity crisis within a short space of time. The declaration of a national state of disaster is encouraged because it provides the ANC-led government and NICOM Eskom with access to channels that are usually closed under democratic processes. More specifically, this national state of disaster will exempt these institutions from the lengthy procurement processes undertaken to procure renewable energy sources and critical parts for maintenance. Whilst there is a legitimate role in applying for exemption, what is clear is that this is not a blanket removal of the existing regulations, but a provision of exemptions with clear targets to reduce load shedding and electricity crisis. Hence, unsurprisingly, the Auditor General of South Africa will be brought in to assist with the appropriation and spending of funds in a manner that does not erode transparency and accountability. Chairperson, the unbundling of Eskom into 3 divisions responsible for generation, transmission, and distribution provides the much needed impetus to ending load shedding and electricity crisis, since the rationale behind the calls for unbundling is that by opening the electricity market, competition among multiple electricity generations and distributors will increase as the barriers to entry are reduced. An important catalyst in this direction is the Electricity Regulation Act, which will be tabled this year to jumpstart a competitive electricity market intended to address load shedding and electricity crisis, while simultaneously driving electricity prices down to improve access to affordable electricity as outlined in the National Development Plan. However, balancing the trade-off between driving electricity prices down and ensuring that all costs are recouped and sufficient returns are made on the investment is one of the major challenges in the electricity market. This is probably the reason why the Minister of Electricity was introduced, to ensure that electricity prices set by the National Energy Regulator of South Africa can balance the financial positions of electricity generators while protecting households and businesses from higher electricity hikes. Addressing load shedding and electricity crisis requires the strengthening of Eskom's ability to mobilize resources aimed at improving investment in the maintenance and the expansion of infrastructure. However, there are concerns relating to significant revenue leakages in Eskom, which are due in large part of the declining culture of corruption and fraud, as well as the culture of non-payment by municipal distributors that owe Eskom to the tune of 56.3 billion as of 31st December 2022. The area municipal debt requires an active partnership not only between Eskom and municipalities, but also between political parties, as most of these indebted municipal distributors are governed by coalitions. What this suggests is that load shedding and electricity can be partially attributed to the instability in South Africa's coalition politics at the municipal level, as this instability often results in municipalities not being able to provide quality public services or honoring their debt obligation on time. Therefore, Chairperson, DA, EFF, and IFE and the Freedom Front Plus must take full accountability for load shedding and electricity crisis, as they are part of coalitions that are complicit in the irregular payment of electricity bills at the municipal level, which culminates in Eskom's debt. As regards the declining culture of corruption and fraud, Eskom has introduced reforms that are linked to the larger goal of anti-corruption, given the legacy of graft in the utilities procurement processes. It is worth noting that Eskom has implemented the crime risk management and an automated procurement system to manage the procurement of goods and services with integrity, while simultaneously combating corruption, bribery, and fraud. These initiatives have yielded major gains and achievements thus far. More importantly, they are resulted in deregistration of delinquent suppliers in Eskom's database, disciplinary action against delinquent suppliers, disciplinary action against delinquent employees, and flagging delinquent employees for future employment. While there are positive signs that corruption and fraud are declining at Eskom, these initiatives will not eradicate corruption and fraud completely within a short space of time. But the ANC-led government remains committed to eradicating corruption and fraud within government and SOEs, including Eskom, despite the resistance of the recalcitrant perpetrators. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we now recognize AIC?
Thank you, Chairperson. This is probably the third debate on the same subject, Honorable Chairperson. This exposes the poor handling of this calamity. Eskom was not always this messy, honorable members. It was Africa's leading electricity producer. It was ranked 11th in the world for installed capacity and the 6th largest African company across all sectors. Today, Eskom has lost its momentum. It has lost rigor and is a sovereignty risk. Its debt is close to 400 billion rand. Eskom has been run down by years of incompetency, looting, and mismanagement. In 2014, Honorable Chair, Eskom's then CEO, Sidiso Matona, said the following of Eskom, I quote, "There is no crisis at Eskom. I think the way Eskom gets reported on creates the perception of a crisis," close quote. In the following year, in 2015, the then ANC Secretary General, Mr. Mantashe, said, I quote, "The crisis at Eskom is a positive crisis," close quote. What positive about the crisis at Eskom in 2015, we wonder. Only the then Secretary General of the ANC and now Minister of DMRE can tell. We have long advised that Eskom must be listed on the JSE in order to raise capital and liquidity. We have said we need to leave the transmission of electricity to Eskom while inviting other players to be in charge of electricity generation. Our views are informed by Eskom's own admission that it may take 2 to 3 years to reduce load shedding. This acknowledgement exposes the fragility of the state of our electricity supply. We can no longer afford to lean towards clinical ideological strictures which have no meaningful value to end load shedding. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Can we call on Cope? Cope? Okay, can we move to PAC? PAC? Then we call on Honorable Legioff. I might pronounce it wrongly, but this is his maiden speech, honorable members. I want you to note that. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, our country is at a critical juncture in its history, and the primary determinant that will decide whether South Africa becomes a failed state or alternatively becomes a resurgent, modern, forward-looking regional power in Africa will be entirely decided by how we respond to our national electricity crisis. While there are many pathways which we can take to respond to this crisis, there are only a few that have any reasonable prospects of success. All of these solutions, in some manner of speaking, involve in the short term obtaining as much power as is practically possible from Eskom's installed generation capacity. And over the long term, all of them involve additional energy generation capacity being produced by sources that are external to Eskom. We only have to look to a country like Vietnam to see what is possible with the right kind of leadership. They managed to install over 9 gigawatts of rooftop solar PV and wind energy generation capacity in just one single year. In the year 2020, Vietnam effectively ended our electricity crisis in just 12 months, something we have not been able to achieve in 17 years. So the question is not whether or not we can do this in South Africa. We absolutely can. The real question we should be asking ourselves is, who exactly is standing in the way of us achieving these types of outcomes? It is also very important to acknowledge the reality of the climate crisis in this debate. It is for this reason that the just energy transition must provide us with the necessary guardrails to ensure that we steer our country forward toward a type of energy resilience which is fundamentally sustainable and that does not borrow from our children's futures to take easy shortcuts that might inadvertently precipitate an even more dangerous environmental crisis for us to deal with in the future. But we also need to be very honest and have an honest conversation about where we are now find ourselves. The age of centralized state-owned power generation in South Africa has passed. We have had our chance at running an all-encompassing power utility that could have produced cheap and affordable electricity for us all. But the truth is that after nearly 2 decades of criminality, mismanagement, and a generalized lack of care, the Eskom that existed 20 years ago is just no more. And there is just no way to realistically return it back to its former glory. The Democratic Alliance is under absolutely no illusion about just how difficult the challenge before us is going to be to overcome. The threat of a catastrophic national blackout looms large. Our economy is faltering and all of our socio-economic progress as a country hangs in the balance. Though we desperately need Eskom to be stabilized and to remove the criminality which is so deeply ingrained within it, we have acknowledged the harsh reality that former CEO of Eskom, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, has made so explicitly clear. A single point of electricity production and supply in South Africa is also our single greatest point of weakness. This is why where the DA governs, in places like the city of Cape Town and Nelson Mandela Bay, we are rapidly moving to procure additional sources of energy from the private sector to protect South Africans from state failure. Later this month, Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis will put out to market a tender for 500 megawatts of dispatchable energy capacity, placing it on track to protect its residents from the first 4 stages of load shedding. That is also why the DA-led Western Cape government is spending 1.1 billion rand in the coming year to reduce its dependence on Eskom. Only the DA is responding to the electricity crisis at a pace and scale that meets the present moment of urgency head-on. Only a diversified, decentralized, green energy system will be resilient enough to meet our present and future energy demands and lead us to the peaceful and prosperous South Africa we all still dream of. I thank you.
Thank you. We now call on Honorable Gumede. You also have an extra minute that was left by Honorable Malinga. Honorable Gumede, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I will request that because I'm shaded, my video be off. Chairperson, whilst the EFF tends to talk more about Eskom as a problem case, the party should be careful to rely on a selection biases to give the impression that things are getting worse and not better at Eskom. The most important point to note, therefore, is that there is a wide diversity of progress at Eskom that cannot be simply captured by EFF partial views. Relevant to note is that Eskom revenue increased by 21% from 204 billion to 246 billion in the previous financial year. This increase was due to the increase in electricity tariffs and the partial recovery of volume sales. Whilst Eskom revenue has increased significantly, most of it covers debt cost as the second cost driver after primary energy cost. And this explains Eskom's severely maintenance underperformance over protracted periods. The degree of debt cost is of course frequently cited as a reason why the reliability maintenance of Eskom power station has stagnated, and thus the country continues to have a high number and stages of load shedding in considering the issue. The ANC-led government has decided to take 254 billion of Eskom existing debt to give the utility a space to prioritize the maintenance of power station to improve the energy availability factor. Although conservative opposition parties like DA and the Freedom Front are concerned about the limits of how far the 254 billion debt relief can go, there are potential significant progress to be made from the groundbreaking intervention. For an example, the 254 billion debt relief would give Eskom a latitude to deploy best skilled, sufficient capital, and best original equipment manufacturers support in critical plant to conduct reliability maintenance in Kadal, Matla, Majuba, Yuva, Tutuga, and Kusile power stations. The recovery of these 6 power stations will stop load shedding indefinitely. Of course, addressing load shedding does not breach the generation capacity gap, but it exposes the shortcoming of the EFF highly misleading impression that there is no progress in ending load shedding at Eskom, despite the institutional intervention meant to address it. In addition, the 254 billion debt relief will enable Eskom to prioritize capital expenditure in the transmission and distribution networks, which is crucial in terms of bringing more renewable energy sources of offer from Western Cape, Northern Cape, and Eastern Cape onto Eskom grid to address the current shortages as the matter of urgency. Chairperson, the Energy Action Plan, which is monitored by the National Electricity Crisis Committee, NECOM, has delivered much in terms of overall key interventions since July 2022. The Energy Action Plans, key interventions that have been realized tangibly include, among others, the NECOM has instructed departments to cut red tape and streamline regulatory processes for energy projects, including reducing the time frame of environmental authorization of 57 days from over 100 days previously, reducing the registration process from 4 months to 3 weeks, and ensuring target grid connection approval are provided with 6 months. A new ministerial determination has published for 14,771 megawatts of new generation capacity from wind and solar and battery storage to accelerate further bid window. Project agreement for 19 projects from bid window 5 and 6 projects from bid window 6 of the renewable energy program, representing 2,800 megawatts of new capacity, will soon proceed to construction this year. Acknowledging these achievements, key intervention enables to make better sense of the effectiveness of the NECOM in implementing the Energy Action Plan to reduce load shedding and energy crisis. Obviously, opposition parties like EFF, the IFP, UDM, and ACDP that are hardware to the preconceived ideas that the ANC-led government is inefficient would never capture this achieved key intervention in their vocabulary, because acknowledging such stories might compromise their existence. Chair, akukho soka ladla kahle imbangi ikhala. Nevertheless, the fact that Energy Action Plan has achieved serious milestone between July 2022 and March 2023 indicates that NECOM has capacity to make change happen. And with the introduction of the Minister of Electricity and the declaration of the state of the nation disaster to respond to the electricity crisis, the Energy Action Plan will rationalize and streamline to address load shedding and energy crisis directly, thereby leading the best practical solution. Chairperson, the National Treasury has also introduced the solar panel tax incentive as outlined in the Energy Action Plan to encourage individuals and business to invest in new unused solar PV panels of 275 megawatts. This incentive is crucial in several respects, namely, the rollout of solar panels will minimize dependency on the grid, which is an indirect input attempt to end load shedding, while simultaneously reducing the cost of electricity, which tend to weigh more on the poor, and the cost of electricity will be lightened by the feed-in tariff for small-scale embedded generation, which enables households and businesses to sell excess electricity generated using solar panel back to Eskom. The City of Cape Town has already started to implement the implementation of the feed-in tariff. And we hope the DA Energy Action Plan implementation track records this cutting-edge intervention and attribute it to the ANC rather than itself, as it is always the case. Apart from the solar tax incentive, progressive spending is critical to reducing load shedding and energy crisis. Unfortunately, there are many areas of concern regarding spending in government and in Eskom, which call measures to increase accountability and transparency. President Ramaphosa announced in the State of the Nation address about a month ago that Auditor General of South Africa will be brought in to ensure continuous monitoring of Eskom and government expenditure to guard against any abuse of funds ring-fenced, to respond effectively to the load shedding and energy crisis. More importantly, in line with the Zondo Commission's recommendations, Eskom is implementing an automated procurement system to better manage procurement, spend, and protect the data against integrity breaches. And this shows that the ANC-led government is willing to assist Eskom to improve its procurement system to any greater extent.
Time up, honorable member. Your time is up.
What about the additional minutes?
It has been included already. Thank you very much. I think you have delivered your message. Honorable members, before I allow the last speaker to speak, let me rule on the issue of the use of terms and counter accusations. It looks like on this matter, we'll have to rely on the Hansard, and therefore a ruling this time will not be possible. That will be delivered in the full plenary after consultation with the speaker. So that's the ruling. Can I allow now the last speaker of the EFF to close the debate?
Ndim lowo chair.
Kuba.
Siyabulela. Chairperson ucacile ukubana ngabe ANC ayinaplani.
I see a hand before I allow you, Honorable Hadebe. What is the hand for?
No, thank you, Chairperson. The speaker's list, which was agreed upon, which was final, around 1 o'clock, indicated that Honorable Maotwe was going to close the debate since it was her motion. And Honorable Maotwe was ejected out of the platform because of her defiance to the presiding officer. So, Chairperson, there's no way that because she was ejected out, it is not a matter of connectivity. So she cannot be given a space to close the debate. Thank you, Chair.
No, Honorable Hadebe.
That rule does not apply.
We are not giving the space we are giving the space to the party, not to Honorable Maotwe. So that's my ruling on the matter. Can we allow the speaker to proceed?
Asbonge, Chair, at least when you acquaint yourself with the documents of the Parliament. Chairperson, the ANC has no plan. Now we hear that coalitions are to be blamed for the ANC mayors and thugs who stole the Eskom budget, and today they are sitting with the bills of Eskom that are not paid. The captain of the ship is a disaster. Eskom has appointed yet another European consortium to review all coal plants. It was not enough that Biden imposed on us how to deal with our coal mines. Yet we have here in South Africa the expertise that can look into the development of Eskom that has been given a blind eye. It's not surprising though, there's European consortium that is given an opportunity to take money, which is a bailout to Eskom, is an ANC activity of Tagar. 12 million people can't find jobs and they resort to open their own small businesses. What happens to those small businesses? They are forced to close due to the lack of power supply. The ANC speakers here, they come to talk about Eskom improving. Eskom is worse. Mortuaries are shutting down. Our people no longer observe their rituals, cultures, because they must bury their loved ones within the short space of time or choose to bury decayed bodies. Thieving and thuggery is the order of the day in all Eskom transactions, and they do this with impunity because majority of the ANC in parliament come and shut everything down. Criminals are rejoicing and harassing our people during these dark hours of the load shedding. Economy is in its knees, losing at least 1 billion a day, especially when we're on stage 6. Rural areas and townships are lucky to have access to electricity 4 hours before.
Honorable Member, your time is up. Otherwise, thank you very much.
We call on everyone on Monday to come to join us on the shutdown. Thank you very much.
That concludes the debate and the business of the visual mini-plenary. The mini-plenary session will now rise. Thank you very much. Before we hear insults outside the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.